Yo, yo, yo. What's up? What's up? What's up? Give up the rock. And hello to my fellow revolutionaries. You know who you are. And we have already got the first comment of the day coming in from Avalava on ye old stream chat on the Discord. Yo, yo, it's time to champion some revolutionary thought dumplings. I'm assuming that is in relation to our topic today, which is Australia-China relations. And Avalava would like a disclaimer on that, which is not a euphemism for taking a shit. So revolutionary thought dumplings are exactly what they are on the surface. Nothing more and nothing coded. Squeeb89, hey ya, in the chat. It's good to see you. Happy Friday to everyone who's listening to this. If you are in Australia right now and you know what the future is like, then yes, happy Friday to you. If you are joining us, though, from another part of the world, though I am actually taking a shit right now. Well, as long as they're not revolutionary thought dumplings, then, that's okay. If you're joining us from another part of the world, and it's still Thursday and you haven't had the joy of dipping in to Friday, then my condolences to you. The end of the week is close. The end of the working week is close. And you're one step closer to that favored time known as the weekend, a time in which we get to absolve ourselves from the grips of capital thanks to the hard work, protest, imagination, and fury of past generations of working people who thought, hey, there must be more to life than working 7 days a week, 12 to 18 hours a day. Shouldn't we have a little bit of time to enjoy the fruits of modern society? And so giveth the weekend, and hopefully so no one taketh it away either. So, in saying all of that, I would like to pay my respects to workers past, present, and emerging. It is on your shoulders that the entirety of modern industrial society has been built. Capital may be the force that does these things. There may be a class of people, a capitalist class, that puts things into motion and ostensibly pull the levers of power and control things, but without labor, without the working people of the world, we wouldn't have any of the wonderful things that we see around us. So, yes, I pay my respects to all you working people out there. You know who you are. You know who you are. You're making the economy, you're making the world turn over. And without you, we would have none of the joys of modern society. So, yes, remember that. And you should take a moment to realize that it is people like you that have made the world what it is today. So, long live the weekend, and I hope you get access to it and capital is not allowed to touch you. And if you are working on the weekend, I hope that you've got some type of penalty rates or some type of special conditions to compensate you for having to exchange your labor at a time where you shouldn't be. So I'll leave that with you. Yo, 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 yo. What's up? What's up? What's up? Give up the rack. It is 4IS in the house. And I'm assuming he's going to say something like, give up the Dwayne. But I don't want to be too, there it is. Don't want to be too presumptuous, but here we are. Assuming away. Now, today, we're going to be turning away from the Trump drama. Like I've had enough, and I'm sure you have too, to a certain extent. Like, don't get me wrong, there's nothing like some good old house is on fire, and I mean by the White House over in America, watching the flames, toasting ye old hands as the American presidency goes down the gurgler. Like, especially with someone so audacious and pretentious as Donald Trump, really thinks he's God's gift to the human race. And, how did they not see this one coming? Honestly. Like all of the political advisors, all the people around him, they've been trying to cover it up. They've he was told about this. When he first got into office, he sent out special directives to the FBI, telling them to flag each time that he's been listed in the Epstein files, and they've been getting back to him, as reportedly. And so, yes, he's implicated. The question is to what extent. But yeah, I wanted to dip away from the drama and talk about China, as Squeebs put it in the chat. For us, that South Park short was hilarious, though. Same voice actor as Saddam. Oh, I haven't seen the South Park short, actually. Can someone drop it in the Discord? Because it did come up on my feed, but I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. So if you want to have a look at it now, I wouldn't mind if somebody drops it in the chat. Now, yeah, I want to take a turn away from the Epstein drama because, it's going to be unfolding for a long time. We're going to be coming back to it anyway. And I want to take it back to something else that is very important from a geopolitical standpoint right now. And my position on China, it's got to do with the fact that in a surveillance capitalist world, in a world that is potentially turning techno-feudalist, there is a new Cold War happening between East and West again, but this time it is framed between the OG hegemon, America, the United States of America, versus China this time. So not the Ruskies. This time we're going full East, and we're going to, the West is going to be taken on China, and they're going to be doing that through a new technological development, which is artificial intelligence, as opposed to before, which was more of just an arms race. And specifically arms race built around nuclear proliferation. This time it's going to be around artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence kind of mixes in with every facet of society, every facet of the economy, from warfare to diplomacy to everything, education, agriculture, what have you. And whoever wins this AI race, as opposed to the original Cold War, which is more about a dick measuring contest, who's got the biggest whatever, and they can fight each other off through military means and then showing off how good their economies are. The AI arms race is really a race about what's going to technically change society forever and who's going to be able to control that technology, which is going to, yes, like I said, reshape the human race itself. And so China relations are really, really important right now as a result of that. And for someone like us, I know there's Australians and New Zealanders that listen to this as well as Americans, but for people like us in Australia and New Zealand, in the Australasia region, this is an incredibly important time for us. We are we're standing and staring down the barrel of one of those diplomatic junctures that will define our history, not just the history of the human race, but our history in this region of the world, in this Southeast Asiatic region, the Australasian region, as I described before. This is a pivotal moment in our history, and the questions that are being asked of Australian politicians and the world of us generally is, whose side are you on? Whose side are you on? The Americans have been reaching out to Australia very recently and asking for unequivocal statements that if a war breaks out in Taiwan, America goes into war, that we'll be backing them. And the Australians have been playing usual diplomatic chess with that one and saying absolutely nothing. But no one really commits to a war until it really is on your doorstep / is already happening. So I don't know what the Americans want there exactly. But they've been trying to pull it out of Australia that they want that, while Anthony Albanese has basically been over in China engaging in Panda diplomacy or Panda hugging. as the euphemism goes when it comes to any type of diplomatic relations with China that aren't very, very forceful, like what's going on with America and China at the moment, like trade wars. If it's not that, and it's all hunky-dory, and you're taking pictures with Xi Jinping and high-ranking members of the CCP, then it's panda diplomacy. So remember that one when you hear that one thrown around in journalistic discussion. So, this is a very important time in our history, as a region, and then world history, because yes, China and America are obviously combatants in this new age Cold War, the AI Cold War, and we have an important role to play. Like, do we just pick a side? Do we play both sides? Do we serve a diplomatic role? Do we serve a role for humanity? Do we try and get in there and settle differences so like the human race isn't under threat? Because obviously the risk that comes with an actual war, hot or cold, but a cold one that develops into a hot one between the US and China, is mutually assured destruction for both sides of that one. And pretty dire consequences for life on Earth, If there was a bit of a nuclear winter or fallout or something like that, that was as a result of their showdown. So, Australians, New Zealanders, I think as people in the Anglosphere that are, trapped at the end of the Earth in Asia, actually have quite an interesting role to play in world diplomacy. We are strategic. We are massively productive when it comes to resources and agriculture, like massively productive. And so, China wants to trade with us. Like, if you look at it, if you think about it, and everyone loves the economy, they say money makes the world go round. If you think about it, just in those terms, our export industry to China. China is our biggest trading partner, bar none. Bar none. If we're just looking at this from an economic perspective, not the whole, Western solidarity kind of thing, or English-speaking solidarity, or our history and ties to the British, or anything like that. China is our biggest trading partner, and by far. I think it is then Japan and then the United States. The United States aren't even number 2. And so, if you think about this from an economic perspective, what is good for the Australian economy? What is good for Australian farmers and business, etc., to insert usual liberal bullshit jargon when it comes to running a good economy, bourgeois talk. This isn't really even a conversation. Do we choose America or China? We should be aligning our interests with those of the Chinese. It just makes sense. Avalava, the war between the US and China has been digitally hot for some time now. Yes, it has. Yes, it has. There have been many accounts of cybersecurity attacks on the US that MSM attribute to China. Yes. Yeah, they've been attacking each other, I would say, for a long time. The Chinese are very nervous about any type of cyber attacks on their territory as well. And the Americans have been subject to a lot of interference, let's say. And it's not just from the Chinese either, but this is the way of the future. And AI will only increase the rapidity, the effectiveness, and the proliferation, I guess, of this type of cyber attack. And that's why it's a Cold War in the AI sphere, because if your AI is better than mine, and cybersecurity attacks are a huge thing, you could shut down somebody's entire power grid, you could turn off all of their communications, you could wipe out an entire population before even firing a single shot. Not wipe out, but you could render ineffective an entire population before you've ever fired one shot. And that's where we're at in the future of warfare. If you're wondering where I'm reading that from, I'm just taking that off the Discord here. Avalava's in the stream chat and dropping some truth bombs. So yeah, we're going to be looking at basically backtracking. I know this is over a week old now, but we're going to be backtracking and looking at what Albo did in China, just getting an understanding and see what the media is talking about there. And then we're going to go and kind of sift through some of the talk that's happening now in relation to China and Australian relations, or China at large. And there's been some other stuff like ScoMo. I don't know why this guy is still relevant, but like ScoMo's been over in the US fronting a committee telling them that, Australia's falling prey to Chinese interference, and it's not too late for the Americans to come in and save Australia from some type of Chinese strategy of manipulation and control over Australia. So ScoMo's over in America fighting for our interests and trying to get the Americans to help us. We are a damsel in distress, and thank God for ScoMo. So he's been over, and like all of this is kind of in the big shadow of the AUKUS deal. Dun dun dun. The UK, helping provide the reactors, man, for the nuclear subs. America's, deciding whether or not they can afford to build the nuclear subs for us, the ones that they pushed on us after we had already engaged the French to do so, pissing off the French immensely so we could go suck off our fellow English-speaking friends in the UK and America. And like they're deciding whether they want to follow through with it anyway, whether it's a good deal for the Americans. Like, this has been going on for years now. And anyway, all of this is, yes, in the shadow of AUKUS, these Australian-China relations. Supposedly, China's arming up in the region. They're going to different places and, investing in them and building military bases. I don't know, in Vanuatu, and doing drills where they circumnavigate Australia with their warships. And it's scaring everybody. So, in the shadow of all of this military posturing and this potential for aggressive behavior, let us talk Australia and China on this easygoing Friday. And we'll escape some of the drama from America for now before we jump back into it. Head first, I believe, next week. Avalava, I think another point is that Trump is pushing the us or them jingoistic phrases that Noam Chomsky highlighted as dogmatic persuasion as another tool for manufacturing consent. Yes. And what's interesting in all of that is that, us or them, and why we should be looking at this meeting of our great leader, our supreme leader, Albo, with Supreme Leader Xi Jinping, is that China has had us over for a party. And like, what a party it was, Albo's having 2 banquets in a day, meeting all the top figures in the CCP. They've given him quite the show, and Trump won't even speak to Albo. When Albo was in Canada, already dressed up and ready for a show, Trump shafted him, and is not interested in talking to him right now with all the drama that's going on. So, if it's us or them, I'll tell you who's being more accommodating, kind of thing. It's definitely not the Americans. I'll tell you that much for free. Steven said, in here for a Fido stream, as usual. Hey, I'm here. It's good to see you. Sweep says, pretty sure only just in last couple of weeks made our next AUKUS payment. There you go. We only just in the last couple of weeks made our next AUKUS payment. And who's watching where the money's going? I hope there's some good accountants following that money trail over to the UK or wherever it's going to make sure they're spending it right. Hey? And it's not even a deal that was entered into by a Labor government, let's be honest. So, should this current Labor government be caring about what's going on with AUKUS? I don't know. It's a good question. One for you to think about. So let's quickly, I know I said we're not going to spend any time in American politics, but like this actually did come up on my feed. So 4AS has hit me up with a little video. Yeah, the South Park people have returned, and it looks like they're doing something on South Park Studios. Let's have a look-sees, shall we? Relax, guy. Oh my god. Well. It's interesting they're reviving the old Saddam Hussein character, like persona, let's say, to superimpose on Trump. That's very interesting development of that joke and that humor. And they're really not holding back with the sex, are they? Like they weren't so graphic before, I don't think. Not always, anyway. Two censored comments. Squeeb 89. What are you doing? I'm not sure. Have you put anything in the Discord there, so I can actually see what you wrote? You naughty man, you. Blooms on YouTube discussed Trump in South Park. It's more a bait to get him to block the Paramount merger than a direct attack. That's pretty funny. It's fitting that they used the same voice as Kurtman. That's interesting, actually, isn't it? Squeeb, they're using that that's the Paramount merger that's going on at the moment, because that's what happened to Colbert as well. He got taken down as an act of good faith, so Trump would approve the merger. Other comment was that we need to keep playing America and China to avoid becoming a vassal state of either. Yes. I can change. Dr. Nathan, howdy all. Dr. Nathan's in the house. Stopped right on the wang. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, like the timing. And like, look at his face too. The expression is fantastic. Very funny. Very funny. Check the stream chat before you move on. Stream chat. Yeah, sorry, I missed the stream chat. Whoops. PSA contains synthetic media. Before we finish with America, this is South Park Studios as well. Okay, let's have a look-sees. Why the fuck not? Hey, let's go for a little South Park run on a Friday morning. Why the fuck not? Ah, you're joking. PSA contains synthetic media, South Park. I don't know why some of them get done and others don't. I'm trying to type it in. Ah, really? But we just watched one. Relax, guy. No, whatever. Unless people have any objections, we can go to actual YouTube. But like there may be ads. Dun dun dun. No, say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. Not ads.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Oh no, there's no ads.
Okay.
All right.
Absolutely.
I can change. All right, let's have a look. You know, this technology has been not easily obtainable for the layperson for a long time, but it's getting pretty fucking good, and it's gonna be disseminated real fast. Like if they can create that, like that was pretty realistic. Oh my god, I will allow it. Such an inaccurate portrayal. The Trump character isn't fat enough. I will allow it. Totally worth it. Oh man. The world of deepfakes is coming. And like, we are not ready. We are not ready for the quality of this stuff yet. And like how inventive people are going to be able to get with this stuff. we as a human race are not ready. And that was really real, honestly. Damn. Do it now. This was the actual sentiment. Like, real parent of money plus 20 million worth of airtime. It's a worm. This is hilarious. Shia Halud. Scrape. All because Paramount, though, better to roll over than let its business deal get blocked. Yeah, well, hey, capitalism, baby. They really wanted to have that merger. Steven said, shots fired. Someone showed up for a fight. Yeah, I know. That was shots fired. My God. That was shots fired hard. Dr. Nathan, have you seen their other mini-series they did with deepfake Trump being a salesman? No, I haven't seen that. I think there is a clip of Jesus under his breath telling South Park to hush up about Trump. That's interesting. Ah, man. That was pretty funny, actually, I must admit. I'll pay that. I will pay that. So, look, shall we get into the actual flavor of today's live stream? If we're finished just going through South Park clips that are pretty funny, don't get me wrong. But this is the resurgence of South Park that you were talking about in Dr. Nathan. They're back. And they're pushing buttons. They're pushing buttons. We had the meat. Now it's time for the 2 veg. All right, we got one last. What's this? Sassy Justice and Fred Sassy full episode deep fake. Even if it was a tad small. Yes, even if we didn't get much meat. It's time for the veg. Is this a long thing in Dr. Nathan? Does it go for a while? It's quick. Oh, okay, fair enough. All right, let's see if I can do it on FreeTube then. If we get done. Seriously. This is great. I said at the start, I was like, there's no more Trump bashing. We're going to give him a break. I'm over it. But like, this has revived my interest. This is pretty funny. So what's this? Sassy Justice, brought to you by Deepfake and Deepfake, the movie. Fred Sassy is an American consumer advocate and a reporter for the Cheyenne News at 9, a local TV station in Cheyenne, Wyoming. On his weekly show, Sassy Justice, Fred goes to battle for the common man in his hometown. This week, he's uncovering the dangers behind manipulated videos that are increasingly popping up on the internet. Like, this is the age, man. It's coming. It's getting way better, too, and way more accessible. All right, let's do it.
You're watching Channel 9, Cheyenne, Wyoming.
The times they are a-changin'.
Here in Cheyenne, scammers are finding new ways to take advantage of you, the consumer. Now, with a technology called deepfake,
You can get screwed over and lied to in ways never before possible. Hi, I'm Fred Sassy. Today we'll dive into the world of deepfakes. Plus, is a local Cheyenne dialysis clinic charging too much for dialysis? All this and more, right now, on an all-new Sassy Justice.
Cheating all over the place, coconut cream pie in your face, call it justice.
Sassy Justice.
Absolutely don't grab
Fred Sassy, Sassy Justice. Why is this door closed?
Call it justice.
Sassy Justice.
Coming for you.
Sassy Justice.
Call it justice.
As human beings, we all rely on our eyes to determine reality.
It's quick, just a little Trump bashing. It's satirical as hell. More CC on mobile, so I can't use Discord. Okay. All I said was, let's chase the Trump dragon. Yeah, one more hit. Come on. Give me one more hit. This is the South Park people. This is crazy. There's a new project from South Park's Trey Parker and Matt Stone. God.
As human beings, we all rely on our eyes to determine reality, except for blind people. Not sure how they do it. As Cheyenne's leading consumer advocate for over 30 years, it's my job to keep a constant eye out for hoaxes, fakes, and bullpoop. But what happens when scammers deliberately want to trick our eyes? Suddenly, we're no better than blind people ourselves. We might even be worse. They're called deep fakes, and some people in Washington think they're a threat to our democracy. One of those people is former Vice President Al Gore. I was able to speak with him in this Sassy Justice Zoom-exclusive interview. Mr. Gore, let me start by asking, why are politicians in all of Washington so concerned about deep fakes?
Well, what has people in the government really scared is that deep fakes can put words in people's mouths. You know, make people say things like vagina and poop. And then you've got senators going around saying vagina poop. But they didn't say vagina poop.
But you're saying deep fakes are already out there.
Yes, deep fakes are everywhere. I'm serial. I brought along a video. I want you to watch this video. What you're about to see is not really Tom Cruise. Someone took the computer and they made him say and do things he wouldn't say. Now watch, and remember, this is not Tom Cruise.
Hi, I'm Tom Cruise. It's me, Tom Cruise. Vagina poop. Vagina poop.
But this is Tom Cruise that I'm watching.
This is what I'm talking about. It fooled you, and I'm being serial, but you don't even know what's real and what isn't. That's the problem with deepfakes.
Super serial.
That's why we all have to take it.
Yeah, it's fucking 4 years old. That's crazy. This was uploaded in October 2020. That's mental.
It's serial.
And the former vice president was right. Combing through the internet, I found hundreds of deep fakes. There were ones of
Scarlett Johansson.
Vagina poop.
a few of Tom Hanks,
Oh, vagina poop.
and even our beloved Carrie Underwood.
Oh, vagina poop. Vagina poop.
It's disgusting and hurtful. And many of the celebrities are now coming forward saying they've had enough.
And do you know who's putting these out there? It's like Russia, which is like the worst country in Europe, because they have nothing better to do because it's shitty and cold over there, and they just eat beef stroganoff and dance with bears. Okay, next question.
So how do we defend ourselves against these video scams? I have answers. Plus, it's the viral video of the president everyone is talking about. That's next, right after this word from our sponsor.
Are you feeling run down? Have you been diagnosed with type 1 or type 2 kidney failure?
Then come on down to Cheyenne Dialysis. We've got all the deals and all the customers that made me the dialysis king of Cheyenne. Full kidney dialysis is $89,999. 2-day full kidney dialysis, $199,999. At these prices, you can't afford not to get dialysis. No insurance, no problem. We'll work with you using your mortgage, will, or other assets. Stop being a burden on your family and come get dialysis today.
Has anyone ever been to like the Midwest or anything like that and seen American TV? Pretty crazy. It's not too far off the truth, too. Let me just say.
And don't get it from anyone but the dialysis king.
On the corner of Laramie and Fairfax, right next to Applebee's in downtown Cheyenne.
Justice.
As a black belt in Taekwondo, self-defense comes naturally to me. But how do we defend ourselves against deep fakes? My next guest says all we need to do is listen. It's Academy Award-winning actor Michael Caine.
The human brain is a very clever thing, and it can detect the differences in what is a real voice and what is a fake voice. And you know, a human being.
Wings of Cheese in the house. How you going? Is that you on the stream chat? I think we've had a few people drop off recently. So if you're still watching this, please let me know in the chat because it looks weird from my end. But Wings of Cheese, if that is you in the stream chat, it's good to have you. We are taking a diversion from today's actual stream. And we're looking at deep fakes because Trump is getting done. And yeah, we're having a look at the deep fake territory. We're about to get over into our main course, just dabbling in what the creators of South Park have been up to with some deep fake technology.
Couldn't be a good enough impersonator or actor to pull it off.
But couldn't you just get someone who's like really good at impersonations and dub the voice?
The perfect impersonation, it can't be done. It's impossible for a human to accurately mimic somebody else's voice to 100%, where you just think that's him or her, you know. I saw the Tom Cruise deepfake, and like everybody else, I was like, blimey, that's Tom Cruise. But I listened, and you know what? There's little differences in the deepfake Tom's
I'm
voice
Tom
and real
Cruise.
Tom's.
It's me, Tom Cruise.
And I listened, and I could hear differences in the voice, tiny little mistakes. To tell a deep fake, all you got to do is watch with your ears.
I tried watching the internet with my ears for several days, and honestly, I just got confused. There had to be another way. I spoke with my computing expert, Lou Chang, at the Cheyenne Institute of Technology.
At the Institute, they have been researching ways to detect fake videos. Lou Chang says they've been using it to analyze the recent viral video of the president.
That's right, Sassy. You see, by using algorithms, we can actually deconstruct the images, and the computers can tell us whether they have been manipulated or not. For instance, let's just look at the video of the president that went viral last week.
This is a pretty good one. That's fucking hard to tell. My God. And the voice is pretty good too. I love you can see Trey with the puppet. Yeah.
Mr. Trump, are the rumors true that you had a stroke?
No. No, look. They said I went to Walter Reed Hospital. I had a stroke. I didn't have a stroke. You know, I beat coronavirus. I beat COVID.
Mr. Trump.
Chris, I beat... Oh boy! Stroke!
Now, you see, I can get the computer to get down to the finite pixel level.
Mr. Trump, are you having a stroke right now, or are you just making fun of people with disabilities?
It looks like the president. It sounds like the president. And simply by running the footage through the deepfake analyzer, we can determine that it is, in fact, 100% real.
No, I'm okay. I'm good.
They're de-aged. Julie Andrews. She looks good. Hey, far out. They've done a good job with this one. All right, I'm going to leave that one there. It's pretty funny, though. But, like, you know, this is the level of the technology. It's crazy. And, like, you know, these are South Park creators 4 years ago. They could put some coin behind something, some big coin. But, like, you know, less and less coin required, I would say, going forward when it comes to this stuff. Much less. It's probably how old she was in Mary Poppins. Where we'll build the new data centers for Texas. They are building a lot in Texas, actually, because Texas has got a lot of water that it's at its disposal. You know, cheap electricity and lack of environmental regulations, yes. And they've got, like I said, access to lots and lots of drinking water. Texas is, just right for a data center. Well, they just signed a $1.5 billion deal for 50 episodes. $1.5 billion? That's crazy. Damn. 1.5 billion. Far out. They're doing well for themselves. Good on them. All right. Let's go. Now, what I want to have a look at first, I want to have a look at, key takeaways from Anthony Albanese's China visit. China. Yeah, let's just get a kind of an overview of what Albanese was doing in China, I guess. Panda diplomacy. So good. Come on, man. We've already been through this. I'm sure we've already been through this. Let me quit this. I'll try it up again. I haven't tested this out before as well. It worked once, didn't work the second time. Why is it doing this? Oh, so annoying. Fine. I'll do it. I'm gonna have to go to YouTube. That's outrageous, that is.
Want 25k for the road?
Oh, it's been a while since you've seen an ad. I can feel it now. Avalava is upset. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to do this to you. I swear it won't happen again.
Jacob, what can the government claim to have achieved on this trip?
Look, I think it's reinforced that we have a relationship with China. We have left that period of the past where we were being, in direct conflict with Beijing. They were hitting us with tariffs. I think that's well and truly behind us.
Yeah, and who was responsible for the fucking conflict that we had with China? Let's be honest. Who was responsible for that? Seriously. I'm pretty sure it was Scott Morrison. It was maybe Scott Morrison's time. I have to double check that. Don't want to slander his good name. But let's do some ChatGPT research, shall we? Let's do my Panda diplomacy one. Let's have a look. When did China put tariffs on Australian imports? $2020. Interesting. Major tariff action in 2020. Bali. Starting in May, China enacted an 80% tariff comprised of both anti-dumping and countervailing duties. While in November 2020, China launched anti-dumping investigations. Interesting. Who was the PM at the time? Scott Morrison. There you go. Always pushing the buttons. Breed that China fear, eh? For a few extra political points.
Off the back of this trip. As you said, there is an audience, and there is an audience in China and there's an audience in Australia. And the Prime Minister's been thinking, I think, about both of those audiences. He copped a bit of criticism today from the opposition, particularly James Paterson, who said it's all starting to look a bit like a lark with visits to the tennis and the Great Wall and pandas. The Prime Minister pushing back on that idea, suggesting...
So I'm not very across Australian federal politics. Was it James Paterson, did he say? Must be an MP. Senator James Patterson. This guy, Senator for Victoria for the Liberal Party of Australia. Got his postal address, biography, list of fears, if you're wondering. Dilemmas A5 James Patterson is an asset for ASIO. Change my mind. Ooh, wow. Stop it. Change my mind. What? You know what? Let's ask ChatGPT about that. And what gives you that impression that James Patterson is a ASIO asset? I have recently heard a wild allegation that James Patterson, senator in Australian federal politics, is associated with ASIO. Do you have any thoughts on that? Hearing him at the Senate hearings gives me that vibe. There's no credible evidence that Senator James Patterson is associated with ASIO beyond his public and formal role. He's not employed or secretly linked. He's a Liberal Party senator, serves Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security. Many media mentions of him and ASIO relate to public security, not covert. He regularly engages with ASIO in his official capacity. It's not speculating very well, I must say. As he's the chair, he has questioned and challenged both ASIO leadership and government perspectives in the Senate. Interesting. It would appear that ye old ChatGPT doesn't agree. Change my mind. ScoMo looking more and more like crazy right-wing Christian Sky News, watching Uncle every day. Yes. And like he's over in America right now, calling out Australia on this. Click on videos of DuckDuckGo's search boom. No ads. Otherwise, we can jump on a call to implement something long-term. Okay, click on videos of DuckDuckGo's search. Boom. No ads. Okay. That's good to know. You just do it through DuckDuckGo. Otherwise, we can jump on a call to make it long-term. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So, all speculation. Dilemma is 85. Okay. Slander. That's what that is. Let's go.
Really, that what he's doing here is showcasing Australia to an audience of 1 billion Chinese. They're the people we want to come to Australia, on holidays, from the Prime Minister's point of view. And I think there's a political edge to that as well. He's effectively pointing the camera back to the opposition and asking, how are you helping build this relationship, or are you niggling? It's a subtle dig, but unmistakable.
And what about on the purely domestic front, just on the pure politics of it? Is there also a political message to Australians with Chinese heritage in this as well?
Well, absolutely, and both sides really are very conscious of this. We've seen that with the opposition leader Susan Lee making a point of visiting Chinese communities. She's done it this week in Perth. She talked about it again today, but she's not holding back. She says he's still essentially not achieving very much on this trip. And I think the Prime Minister's view is that resonates poorly against the opposition with that community you've just mentioned.
Now, going to the bigger questions, the geostrategic questions, I know the opposition during the week was saying they wanted to hear more on about assurances from the Chinese on repetitions of the live firing exercises, at least this, to the extent that there are warnings. Is it realistic that the Prime Minister can actually secure some kind of commitment from the Chinese? And was he looking for one?
Well, I think that if there is a weakness from this trip, the trade side has been, I think, very effective for him. It's really reset that relationship. But as you say, we have unanswered questions, particularly around whether his appeal or request from Xi Jinping to be given more notice the next time the Chinese Navy sends a group of ships to the south. We don't have an answer from that. The Prime Minister hasn't made it clear what he got back on that. We also don't really know, Sarah, how strong the Chinese concern was about the Port of Darwin issue. This is this move to get ownership of the port back into Australian hands. We know China's unhappy about that. We don't know how unhappy they are behind the scenes and how much pressure they're putting on the Prime Minister. But I think for him, it's the trade piece that's been successful.
I want to talk about Taiwan as well, because during this week, both with the Prime Minister but also with the Deputy Prime Minister back at home, they've been very careful to maintain the status quo position on Taiwan. But there was something, there was a shift during the week from the opposition, Angus Taylor, on this programme, answering questions about why Australia should give pre-commitments to the Americans about coming to their defence in the event of hostilities over Taiwan.
See, this is a really controversial one, okay? Like, what are people's thoughts about Taiwan? Like, let's just have the fucking conversation, shall we? Honestly, from what I can understand, like I said, I'm not a big fan, or really across, let's just say, Australian politics at the top level. But from what I can understand, is the Americans, through their defence personnel, have been pressuring the Australians for a commitment with relation to what side of the fence it's going to be on if there was a war over Taiwan. What is Australia going to do? And they're pressuring Australia to respond to this somehow and make a commitment that, yes, if China attacks or invades Taiwan or reclaims Taiwan, depending on who you speak to, and the Americans go in, then we would assist the Americans in that fight. Now, from what I can understand, again, is that, like, you know, even Trump has said prior to his second term that, like, he doesn't want to do it, have anything to do with Taiwan. So, like, the Americans aren't even fully committed to this, but, like, we're being dragged into somebody else's questions about whether we'll commit to someone, which is all completely hypothetical, as I understand it. And so I guess the Prime Minister is being probed right now for a commitment by American defense personnel, while there isn't actually a strong position on the American front about whether they will be assisting Taiwan right now or not either. And from my understanding of these types of situations, like when Australia has committed to the Americans in the past, like things like, you know, failures, like supporting them in Afghanistan and supporting them in Iraq and supporting them in Vietnam, again, all failed campaigns. It wasn't until the war was basically started, or it was pretty clear that something was going down, then Australia made its necessary commitments to our strategic alliance with the Americans. That has been the lay of the land. It's never been, hey, if we decide one day to go over on the off chance, would you? Are you reckon you commit to that now? Like, there doesn't seem. This seems to be well jumping the gun in terms of usual diplomatic relations and commitments for strategic assistance. That's how I understand it. This is well jumping the gun. And Dr. Nathan says, no, 4AS, in terms of Ozpol, it's just a wedge issue. Yeah, fair enough. It is a fucking wedge issue. Massively wedge issue. Dr. Nathan, same as US and Australian policy. there is one China. Dilemmas, yes. Okay, we don't recognize Taiwan. Why would we fight for them? Snap. 4AS, with Sarah Ferguson, Albo made it quite clear that we're in favor of the status quo. But if something went down, we would make a call based on the facts and how it affects our sovereignty. Avalava, China and Taiwan have a long history. They do. I think this is an incredibly pertinent topic, as it will be the flashpoint, the juncture that turns this Cold War II into a hot war. The US is ramping up. If it hasn't already, this wedge between these two places to foment the manufacturing on consent. You know, I think you, Avalava, should get a tattoo, if you haven't already, of like Chomsky going like this. With the words manufacturing consent under it. It's true, there's a lot of that shit that goes around. But yeah, it's a wedge, and it's just a political wedge being used by the opposition to split a very, very stable government. It's just a way for them to take swipes, because like they are absolutely in the political desert right now, long march through the desert, and they have absolutely no hope of survival. I'm not versed much in the China debate. Besides their human rights violations, do we really need to be worried about them? Well, like, that's the thing. Like, if you look at the material reality of history, China hasn't actually been involved in any war since it fought the Vietnamese at the end of the Vietnam War, and it's had some like skirmishes, I guess you would say, with the Indians around the Himalayas recently, like in the grand history of things. And so like they're not a very warring nation by modern standards, let's just say. Whereas the Americans, like, wasn't it just like, a couple of weeks ago that they were flying halfway across the world to bomb somebody else's like civilian infrastructure just because the president felt like he wanted to show off what he was capable of so he could cut some deals? Like, could you imagine if Xi Jinping, just to show off, like just before like the Albo went to visit, instead of like panda diplomacy, it was, something more along the lines of, he just wants to flex. He wants to flex. It's flexing diplomacy. And he decided to get some bombers and fly them halfway across the world in the middle of the night and bomb some nuclear facility or some type of, I don't know, civilian infrastructure in South America somewhere, just to show the Americans that he could fly across the world and end a potential threat to them, just like that. Could you imagine if the Chinese had done something like that? Like, the world would be like in absolute chaos right now. But the Americans do it. Everyone's just like, this is normal. It's just the Americans dropping bombs on people. But like, China hasn't really had that record at all. Yes, it's done some military drills, gets a little bit, edgy in the South China Sea. And apart from things that it does on home soil, like, its record in terms of being belligerent is pretty light on in a modern context. There's a lot more countries out there that get aggressive and like wage war on one another than the Chinese. So like right now, from a very material perspective, they are the least likely to do anything given more recent history, especially from the end of the 20th century into the 21st. So like I think there's a point there, you Enigma, you with your world map image and your one letter name. W, are you new? Don't think I've seen you around before. Around a little, came across this after watching the FJ pod. Welcome. 4IS, no, Indoctrination, whose violation of human rights is greater in the last 100 years, America or China? 4IS says, plug, MysterE. Yes, I will plug. That's not a bad idea. If you are new here and you're listening to this and, you want to join the propaganda train, come over to the Discord, introduce yourself and drop your propaganda. It's good to see what people are watching and looking at. If you want to get notifications, please, for God's sakes, like all of you, even the regulars, if you need to get notifications, because I just don't get notifications out to my base anymore. It's been completely shot to pieces, my relationship with the algorithm. Please go over to Patreon, just become a member for free, and if you can financially support, that would be good. But yeah, please go and sign up for free so I can get notifications to you. But yeah, it's a good point. Okay, indoctrination. You know, who's got a worse violation of human rights over the last 100 years? And you never know what's really going on in China anyway, because it's shrouded in mystery and it's shrouded in propaganda from Western media sources, I guess you would say. So you never really know what their humanitarian record is like with people on home soil. You never know, because it's just so much propaganda about it. Dilemmas. Americans don't understand what a latent nuclear program is, but they're going to find out now. Interesting. It's a dark comment, but why not? It's called gunboat diplomacy. There you go. Well, can you not write gun? Is that why you put an asterisk in that? That's pretty crazy. But yeah, like what's going on with Taiwan? Now, let's just speak about this very clearly. Like in terms of, like Avalava's called it, like there is a long history between China and Taiwan, and it goes back, longer than this recent foray in geopolitics where people are starting to accuse China of being aggressive against Taiwan. Avalava, the ADF are buddies with the US military and the industrial complex. No surprise they are pressuring Albo to cozy up with them and jump on the anti-China train. They will walk into the revolving door after military tenure, straight into the golden consulting positions. Sorry, I missed a few things that you said. The US is ramping up, if it hasn't already, this wedge between these two places to foment manufacturing consent. I saw a guy with large tattoo on his chest that had the face of Marx, Engels, and Lenin. Yeah, well, it's time to add Chomsky to that list. It's time. It is time. But yes, look, Taiwan. Okay, Taiwan, like in terms of modern history, Taiwan was like just a small, regional, agricultural, like it's a province. It was always a province of China. And the only reason it's really sought its independence is, as we have researched on this stream, once the Chinese communists, and Mao Zedong, this was in Australia. That's pretty funny. What a good tattoo regime that gentleman has. The history of it is this. After the Republican Party, let's call it, in China, led by Mao's mortal enemy, Shek, were defeated at the hands of the communists after they both fought. They reunited after fighting for ages, and they reunited. They fought off the Japanese with assistance from the Americans and the Russians. They fought off the Japanese, and the communists kind of took power, and then they fought again amongst themselves. And Chiang Kai-shek had to evacuate, or had to leave, in order to come back. His nationalist kind of party, which is trying to bring in a bourgeois democracy to China, and Mao Zedong was obviously trying to bring in a form of communism. And I say a form of communism because, you can argue for days about whether he made China communist or not. Anyway, Chiang Kai-shek went over to Taiwan. That's where he retreated. And that's why Taiwan has the flag and everything that it has. That's the actual nationalist Chinese symbology of this bourgeois democratic movement that was happening at the fall of, the great Chinese emperors and all that sort of stuff. They were looking to modernize, and Chiang Kai-shek had a plan for making China a liberal democratic society. It would have been in the ranks of all the rest of the liberal democracies of the world. It would have been like any other European country potentially, or it would have been like America itself, subject to the whims of bourgeois society. But Mao succeeded, and the communists succeeded, and they formed a one-party system, and the rest is history. But when Chiang Kai-shek went over to Taiwan, he established his little bourgeois democratic dream over there, and he did a really amazing job of modernizing Taiwan for all accounts. He industrialized it. He set up a political system there. He was basically a dictator, but he was ruler for life, and his son was in power when he left. But he made his son promise, which is something that he wanted to do his whole time, that he would hand over the dictatorship, the control of the country, Taiwan that is, over to a parliament, over to an elected body, and bring real liberal democratic society to Taiwan. And he did that. He actually did that. Chiang Kai-shek and his son actually handed over power to, I guess you would say, the people through, democratic means, which is incredible if you think about it. Like, not many people that have absolute control of an entire country, and like they actually have a plan for bringing democracy in, like, they might talk about it, but they might never actually hand it over. But they had a plan, and they actually did that. And so, like, Taiwan has developed in the way that China would have developed if the Communist Party hadn't have come to power. And so it has actually taken a fairly different trajectory to mainland China. But Taiwan was always it was just another province of China throughout its history. It's always been like that. It might have been taken up by Japanese occupation or invasion here and there, depending on how the Japanese empire was going at certain points of its history, but it's always been associated with China. It's only until very much recently, since the end of the World War II and the independence of the Communist Party in 1949, so let's say from the 50s, that's when they really started diverging. But when China was accepted into the UN and was, recognized as a nation, one of the conditions that the Chinese had when they joined the UN was always, Taiwan is fucking ours, and we are taking Taiwan whether you like it or not. And that was actually one of the terms as well, when America opened up relations with China, relations with China, was they were kind of yeah, fine. And they took Taiwan out of the picture. They took them out of the UN, and they recognized, they formally acknowledged China's right to Taiwan. Everyone was cool with that. It's 50 years ago now. Yeah, 50 years ago now, everyone was kind of yep, China, Taiwan's yours. Don't give a fuck. Do whatever you want to do. And so China's slowly been biding its time. China could have just straight away just been we'll take Taiwan, please. But they've been biding their time. So, they've been, I think, rather diplomatic about this one, the old Chinese, because if they really wanted to, 50 years ago, they could have just swept it away, done what they did in Hong Kong style, and just, unleashed the police, built a bridge there and unleashed the police force on it. I understand that it's much further away. That's hard to do. But even Hong Kong's a very interesting history behind it. But yes, Taiwan has always been associated with mainland China, and it's taken a very divergent path since the 1950s. You could say it's been developed differently, and they would seek their own autonomy now, but the point is, the people that established modern Taiwan were Chinese nationalists who wanted to use Taiwan as a base to invade China and take China back. They were the Chinese that believed that China had gone wrong with communism, and they were going to use Taiwan as a platform and a launching pad to launch an invasion into China to depose the Communist Party. So they really just basically, you have the communist political machine on mainland China, and you have the liberal or bourgeois democratic machine on Taiwan, both the same Chinese people, but like politically non-aligned, using whatever landmass they have as a base to depose the other. So it's really just a bunch of Chinese people with political tension. And I'm sure there's native Taiwanese people that have absolutely nothing to do with all of that. But if you look at them as modern nations, they're very much associated with each other. So, Avalava says, I support the self-determination of Taiwan and its people. I know they want to be independent, though I can also see elements of cultish attitudes and opinions as part of their national and personal identity. A dialogue is the only long-term way to resolve these differences, not war, not death. Taiwan was colonized by so many other countries. There you go. Indoctrination, just ignore what Sheng did to the indigenous people of Taiwan. And yeah, he could seem like a good guy. Like, I think he was a very good statesman. That's the point that I was trying to make. He was an incredibly good statesman in terms of how he modernized a very agrarian society. And I'm still shocked that he actually followed through with what he said, which was democratizing that country in the sense of liberal democracy anyway. Again, when dictators have power, I'm very, very shocked if they would ever hand it back over again. So I'm surprised at that one for sure. Here's a question. How can the population be self-determined and also recognize the outside influences involved in shaping their opinion? How can the population be self-determined and also recognize the outside influences involved in shaping their opinion? I'm not sure if I understand the question. Actually, can you pose it another way? I would like to know more, Avalava. Like, how can a population be self-determined and also recognize the outside influences involved in shaping their opinion? As in, like, the Taiwanese, like, how are they self-determined, or how do they wish to be have self-determination, but also recognize that they're subject to Chinese influence? Is that what you mean? Dr. Nathan, what's your thoughts on the Uyghur genocide? I see a lot of people comparing it to Gaza and Sudan, which is disgusting to me. Well, like I said, like, I think China is shrouded in mysticism. Like, there is, obviously, they control the conversation a lot, and like they control what information comes in and out of China. And as we have found out from breeding Project 2025, like, the Americans spend billions of dollars on creating propaganda that is aimed at their largest strategic enemies like China and Russia and other elements in, I guess, the Middle East. But yeah, they spend billions of dollars. And so, like, when you hear stories about what's happening in China, human rights violations, genocide, all this sort of stuff, like, you don't know if that's actually coming from one of these departments, like Voice of Asia or something like that, that is being funded by the Americans to sow dissent against the Chinese Communist Party because they want to bring the Chinese Communist Party down. So I'm not saying that there isn't a kernel of truth in any of it, but if it's being propped up and inflated outrageously because US Congress funds something like an actual propaganda machine to whip up these stories and cover them with sensationalism in order to depose or undermine the governments of a foreign country, then, like, how the fuck are you supposed to know? And so, like, I would argue then materially that if people are comparing what's happening with the Uyghurs to to the people in Gaza, like, I think it's pretty unequivocal what's happening in Gaza, because, like, not even the Israelis are denying it, to be honest. They're actually flaunting it, whereas the Chinese are continually denying what's happening with the Uyghur population, and they believe that they have the right to do whatever they want with the people within their territory, and it's not as it would appear in Western media. That's the argument that they're using all of the time. I know people that travel to these parts of China, and like incredibly locked down police state kind of stuff, but apart from it being incredibly locked down police state kind of stuff, they haven't given me any indication of there being some type of a genocide going on. What they have described is basically what is happening in many Western countries as well, which is the police state kind of stuff is in relation to terrorist threats and, like, you know, people threatening violence and terrorist activities. So who knows? Who knows? But, like, I think, you know, if you're asking directly in relation to what's going on in Gaza, then I think it's a bit rich. I think it's a bit rich, yes. Honestly, with everything Americans are doing in El Salvador and Florida, I feel like the Uyghur stuff was them telling on themselves. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty pot calling the kettle black. And you know what's really funny with the Americans as well, when you hear them talking about how, I don't know, they're setting up a new ICE detention facility or containment facility or something like that. They're setting up one in Florida called Alligator Alcatraz, and you know, deporting people, sending them to El Salvador to Saycott prison. But, like, specifically the ones, like, they're spending, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars setting up detention centers on American soil to detain potentially American citizens or people that have been naturalized and all that sort of stuff. Like, you know, you change one word there, change one word from American detention facility or something like that to camp, to concentration camp. And, like, it gives it so much different meaning. Like, they are rounding up people that are working in America, people that are contributing to the American economy. They're people that are choosing to live there and move there because they want to make a better life for themselves. Whether or not they've been naturalized, whether or not they've actually gone through the process and they're seeking citizenship, whether or not they've actually been let through the borders, and, like, they're actually going through the system properly, like they're actually going through the immigration court system properly, and they're, like, meeting their parole requirements, they're meeting their immigration requirements. You know, they're being rounded up and thrown into camps. Like, it sounds pretty fascist, pretty Nazi-like, if you ask me. There's some crazy shit going on in America, and yeah, it's funny. In Dr. Nathan, you're right. When the Americans turn around and just, like, look at what they're doing to the Uyghurs. And it's just like, yeah, but you're rounding up Americans, like actual Americans, ones that have been naturalized a lot of the time, and throwing them into concentration camps. Like, people are freezing, people aren't being fed, people are dying in these camps because they don't have medical access, they're not being treated in a humane fashion. And it is, yeah, pot calling the kettle black to turn around and be like, look at the Chinese, look at what the Chinese are doing. It's very rich. There's a lot of richness in this geopolitical situation at the moment. Every accusation is an admission. Ain't that the truth? For sovereign nations being sovereign nations, war crimes are war crimes. ICE is just American for Gestapo. Yes, you have these brown-shirted, masked up guys that come in vans, and pick people off the street. They see them hanging out at immigration courts. They're waiting for them to trap them. Like, this is what the Gestapo were doing. Exactly like that sort of stuff. It's it's crazy, the parallels. It's and like, you know, they call them, even like the liberal media calling them things like detention centers and stuff. Like, call them what they are. These are fucking concentration camps. They're concentration camps. And they're not even good ones. Like, most of them are just like tent facilities. It's crazy. And you have, something like Alligator Alcatraz, where like they're just banking on the fact that because it's in the middle of swampland that's full of alligators and pythons, no one's going to try to escape. So it's pretty low security because, you know, who's going to want to go through alligator infested swamp to get out? Like, it's next level, man. Okay, so Avalava, let's get back to the question. If a population wants to determine their own future, they have to make a decision based on facts, opinions, and likely feelings. These tend to be murky unless you've done some significant research. Most people just want to live their life. So understanding these things at a deep level is not particularly concerning in general. So it's likely the facts, opinions, and feelings about decisions required have been influenced by the ideas that are part of the milieu of society and the mainstream media. Yeah, fair enough. And if they want self-determination, the Taiwanese, like, fucking fair enough. But like, the history of it is this, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what side of the fence you sit on, is that the Chinese have made it very clear that Taiwan, the territory of Taiwan is theirs. And the world never backed Taiwan. Never. Up until very, very recently has this come an issue. And talking about manufacturing consent, this is a big part of manufacturing consent. 50 years ago, the world were like, fuck Taiwan. Who gives a shit? Here, have a seat in the UN. We can fuck Taiwan right off. And they kicked Taiwan out. And now, all of a sudden, when China has become a threat to American hegemony, all of a sudden Taiwan is now back on the table, as in, like, these people need to have their own self-determination. And, like, you know, this is just rule of law kind of stuff. It's moral. It's a moral and ethical question now about, like, whether China should have the right to come in and do what it wants with this sovereign territory. Before, the world didn't give a fuck about Taiwan at all. When it came to exploiting Chinese labor for foreign interests, so foreign capitalists could make it rich, Taiwan was an easy bargaining chip. But now, American hegemony is under threat, Taiwan's sovereignty is back on the table, and everyone cares for the Taiwanese people. They didn't give a fuck about them before, but they are being used as the poster child in some manufacturing consent campaign to foment this fear in the West that China is evil, not just public enemy number one, but evil. So it's interesting in terms of how you manufacture consent for a fucking war, how Taiwan is now being used, where like I said, 50 years ago, no one gave a shit about the Taiwanese at all. Taiwanese are the next Kurds. Interesting. But like, in a good or a bad way. I guess it doesn't matter to the Taiwanese. They just don't want to be used as political puppets. Avalava, the Uyghur genocide is another US intelligence op, as can be seen by those who propagate this idea, though I shouldn't have to prove its non-existence, as I am not the one claiming it's happening. I will. Those who make this claim have the burden of proof. That's interesting. It's like, I've heard a lot of people talk about this, like, it's just not really a thing. It's not really a thing at all, actually. And, like, you know, if you think it is a genocide or something like that, then you got to find out. Also, it's pronounced Uyghur. Thank you. Thank you for confirming. God dang it, CC. All right. Go to the CIGA. Go to the CC. CIA funded ISIS groups to infiltrate Uyghur mosques and stir extremism. we lock those people up for life. China has different ways of dealing with that. Who are we to say which is better for them? Oh, that's interesting. There you go. So CIA, here we go. The CIA back at it again. Hey, who would have thought the CIA interfering in other people's personal or sovereign affairs? The CIA funded ISIS groups to infiltrate Uyghur mosques and stir extremism. We lock those people up for life. That's an interesting point, isn't it? That, like, you know, when we deal with terrorists and stuff like that, they go to Guantanamo Bay, they're tortured, you never see the light of day. But China has different ways of conditioning or reconditioning them for modern society. Indoctrination, CIA and Mossad. Like the interrelationship between the two of those forces. If you thought CIA was bad, wait until you see CIA and Mossad. You know, they are in what a racket, and, like, you know, very much implicated in what's going on now with, I know I wouldn't say it, but, you know, with what's going on with the Epstein files. My God. Mossad, hey? Yeah, if you thought the CIA was bad, wait until you get them in bed with Mossad. And yes, inextricably linked to... Now, who do you think funded ISIS? Well, look, ISIS was supposed to be of assistance to the American state when it needed it, helping fight other insurgents and other bad guys. And then when they're not required anymore and they've been cut loose and then they become the problem, then they've got to become public enemy number one. And so the manufacturing consent loophole goes and goes and goes. The US would love to fight China to the very last Taiwanese. Yeah, very much. Everyone else is expendable, aren't they? Yeah. But, you know, like I said, Trump himself, he's come out quite clearly and said it's not our fucking problem. Just like he said with the Ukraine. Not our fucking problem. And so, like, he doesn't want to defend Taiwan, so I guess time will tell with this hypothetical, because this is what this is at the moment. So when, just for us and Australian politics, when you hear people trying to poke the bear and squeeze things out of politicians in Australia and say, you know, what's your position? What's your position if this happens? And why won't you answer the Americans? Like, this is all hypothetical here. Massively hypothetical. And it is part of the manufacturing consent machine, which is making China out to be this massive threat to, I don't know, Australia's stability, Western stability. And, like, so we got to take a position. It's like, but on what? On what? The Chinese have made claim to Taiwan. No one cared. They didn't do anything about it. And, like, you know, they're posturing, or they're making it clear that that is still an agenda item for them. And the world is kind of, like, making everyone pick sides on this argument. Or particular people are, to try and control the conversation. Hence, manufacture consent. Dilemma is Taiwanese. Actually, Vietnamese works as well. That's a reference to a US policy saying, we will fight Russia to the very last Ukrainian. That's a bit scary, isn't it? Hey? That's a bit scary. Yeah, everyone's expendable, right? Everyone's expendable. Let's get back to the conversation. But, like, I'm willing, I really want to know people's opinions on Taiwan. Like, does Australia get involved? Should Australia get involved? If anything happens, do we all just kind of sit down and watch from the sidelines, like what happened in Hong Kong, when China was like, you know, they moved in with the police and took control of the city? Is it one of those scenarios again? Do you want to be dragged in? Do you want to be dragged into a war at America's behest? Is that is that acceptable? Do you want to go to war because the Americans want a commitment from us, from Australians, and from New Zealanders? Should we? Should we put in enforce conscription in Australia to help feed that machine? Because there are countries around the world that have made that important. Conscription. Is that something that we should be doing here? I think, most people don't want to have that conversation. No, most people don't want to deal with that type of stuff. But they're forcing the conversation on people. You see Thailand and Cambodia are at war as of yesterday. Yeah, their border disputes, which apparently very historic, have manifested into actual fighting. No one asking which side we're taking there. Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because no one gives a shit geopolitically, but everyone cares about making China into this big talking point. There's no way they could get away with conscription in this day and age in Australia. Yes, I agree. Well, it'll be political suicide, but our government at the moment has a large majority. They could easily do it. And what would people do? People wouldn't be able to do anything about it for the next 4 years, at least. Plenty of time to get the system going. But is that what the Americans want? Because that's what would be required for a war. That's what would be required if they want us to commit to a war. And China wants to do something about something a body of land in its sector of the world. That's what we're going to have to, that's what we're talking about here. Indoctrination. My grandfather and his father marched against conscription for their dead uncles and brother in Gallipoli. I will be in jail before I let them go back there. That's interesting. Labor rid us of conscription. They'd be dead if they put us back there. Yeah, well, this type of conversation is happening on a world stage at the moment. I know Finland, they never got rid of conscription after World War II, actually, because of the constant threat of, after the fall of the dissolution of the Soviet Union, because of the ever-present threat of Russia. They've actually, it's just part of their life. And they all men, and I think it's voluntary for women to serve. The Singaporeans have it. You have to do your military service, so everybody in the country is ready because they got fucked over during World War II. They never forgot. And the infamous and Avalava's favorite, the ADF. Everybody who's Israeli and holds an Israeli passport, they have to do their time. So it's not an uncommon event or situation. And in a world where we're devolving into regional spheres, and we're moving away from the globalization that we've enjoyed for the last 50 years, the global stability that we've enjoyed for the last 50 years, conscription is going to be a topic that's going to be coming up. It's going to be a topic that's going to rear its head. It's going to be political suicide, but it is a topic that is going to be rearing its head more and more as we move into a more and more unstable world, where the American Navy is not there policing the world's sea lanes anymore, and you're relying on your own security. It's going to become a bigger question. And what a large continent Australia has to protect, can I just say? Huge land area. Good luck. Our strategic plans in the past were kind of just let's just give up the top half of Australia and we'll figure out what to do with the bottom half once we get there. It's really the world stage, or the America Euro stage. Doesn't seem like the rest of the world is talking about this outside of a few American influenced countries. Yeah, interesting. But that's always been the world stage, right? Hasn't it? There's this geopolitical theorist, and his basic theory for the entirety of world history, of civilizational history, is whoever's basically controlled the Eurasian continent has been able to control the world. So like the most important question is to ask yourself from a geopolitical standpoint in terms of, warring and all that sort of stuff, who's in charge of the Eurasian landmass, like the area between Asia and Europe, who kind of controls that area and keeps it stable, is one that can kind of control global politics. And that area is becoming increasingly unstable at the moment. The Turkish are actually on the rise too. You've got to watch out for ye old Turkish. They're going to become extremely important in geopolitics moving forward. Avalava, there's no way they could get away with conscription in this day and age in Australia. I think I read that before. Yeah, I don't know. Remember, time will tell. Time will tell. It just takes something like Taiwan, I think, to happen, or to like really start becoming effectual for them to turn around and say, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe it's something that Australia needs to take more seriously. Honestly. I disagree. Talk to anyone from Africa and South Asia, and none of them give a shit about what America is doing. World is more fractured than you think it is. Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the world is becoming more fractured. It's actually been quite stable over the last 50 years. They might not give a shit about what America is doing. I don't think any one of them care too much for the Americans and the Europeans and all that sort of stuff. But that type of regional reorganization of the world is going to have big ramifications for security issues, and people are going to have to start defending themselves and looking after themselves. That's going to rewrite the rules of the game massively. Yeah, but none of them are thinking about warfare, but a few. Well, maybe not warfare, but security. Security is a big thing in a world that is no longer policed by the world police, man. What's the point of winning the geographical lottery of Australia, but then getting roped into other dumb countries' dramas? Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Well, that's why, like, my honest opinion on all of this is, if the world is going regional, like, we've got some great regional friends here. Like, you're talking about geographical lottery. Like, we've got a massive population above us in Indonesia, massive consumer base there, massive labor force there, beautiful trading partners. And we're like, close to Vietnam. They're going to be the new China of the manufacturing world. Like, we've got some regional allies here, and we're a food basin. So, we got some great ties regionally to set us off in that geographical lottery that you're talking about. Like, we could have some real stability in this region. But, whatever. Yeah, diplomacy never works that black and white. For send me to jail if World War III happens. I ain't dying in somebody else's war. I think that's a large sentiment and vibe that I'm getting from all of this. But, there might be some people that drink the Kool-Aid that are happy to have their consent manufactured, or are convinced by the manufacturing of consent, and they will probably believe that they're doing a service to help, I don't know, the fledgling Western Empire, and they'll want to fight. And I think conscription is a good idea to help protect Australia's interests against the evil Chinese or something like that. The conversation here and the opinions here are not mainstream, I would say. Not mainstream at all. We have the entire periodic table in Australia. That's funny, actually. Yeah. We are resource, not just a food bowl, you're right. We are resource intensive here too. That's a really good point. Indoctrination, but none of them are thinking about warfare, but a few. Yeah, got it. but they should be. Like, they should be thinking about security, the changing security in a deglobalizing world, just because they aren't. Disagree again. Or think our conscription take is, or I think that's or maybe, or think our conscription take is very mainstream. Yeah, well, I hope it's mainstream. I hope it is. I think our conscription take is very mainstream. Yeah, I hope it is. I really do, because the conversations we have on here are not typically mainstream. And like, yes, most people don't want to go die in somebody else's war. But, you know, again, manufacturing consent is pretty hard. And if people think that they're saving the white race or Western culture, or, you know, sticking up for English-speaking people all over the world, people can be very gullible. I believe, and easily pushed to certain things, unfortunately.
They were obviously the questions that chased the Prime Minister on his way to China. But I just want to play now what Angus Taylor said when we were discussing that earlier this week. Angus Taylor, why should Australia make a pre-commitment of that nature when the United States retains some ambiguity over its position vis-à-vis Taiwan?
What I am saying we should commit to is a joint commitment to the security of Taiwan, to peace in the Taiwan Strait, and I'll say it again. I mean, and they are absolutely underpinning commitments.
I want to fish out the key phrase there, which is a commitment to the security of Taiwan. Now, that is not Australian government policy, and as far as I knew, it wasn't opposition policy. Is Angus Taylor trying to shift the ground here for the opposition?
Well, he denies that, Sarah, but there's no question that his comments have raised eyebrows in especially the Canberra national security community. Taiwan is perhaps the most sensitive issue in Australian diplomacy, and that sensitivity is very much reflected in the official language that you get. As you said, we stick to a very tight set of talking points, Australian officials, that is. Now, Angus Taylor has, in the view of some of these sources that I've been speaking to, certainly pushed the boat out here. He's gone further than what certainly previous governments, coalition governments, have said on this issue. The pre-commitment issue is very vexing because it essentially would pre-commit future governments. Now, my understanding is that Angus Taylor is saying that Donald Trump has said there will be no invasion of Taiwan while he is president, and that implies, in essence, a kind of pre-commitment. But Donald Trump's also said very clearly himself in February, one of his very first cabinet meetings, that he wouldn't pre-commit like that. He never wanted to ever find himself in that position. So it is a very interesting shift in language. There will be more to come, I think, on this debate, Sarah.
Well, Jacob, lots of questions for us to pursue next week when Parliament resumes. Look forward to being there with you. Thank you very much in the meantime.
Indeed. We'll see you there.
Yeah, pre-commitments. I don't know, man. I don't know. Why do they never say that Australia's largest trading partner is China? Why would we shoot ourselves in the foot? America is proving how self-detrimental it is proving itself detrimental thanks to Trump. Yes. Hello, yeah, and they never speak about, like, this is supposedly a bourgeois society, right? And like economy. What's good for the economy, like, kind of thing. They're always going on about that. That's like political issue number one. What's good for the economy will be good for the Australian people. And it's just like, what are we going to do about China? China. It's just like, hello, they are our biggest trading partner. Why don't we call them what they are and call the Americans what they are, which is number 3? We really should be in a world, a capitalistic world, that comes down to, for geopolitical reasons, really comes down to commerce. We really should be crafting our foreign policy based on who our biggest trading partners are and who we do the most business with, because that's how you will survive, again, in a world that is going to be deglobalizing. It's going to be deglobalizing largely, and we're going to see the effects of that over the coming decades. we should be, that should be a massive consideration, and we should be thinking about people that are closer as well, like in Southeast Asia, who are our friends in Southeast Asia, because we're so incredibly, like, we're in the heart of it. We should be part of ASEAN, and we should be down with whatever type of diplomacy needs to be done within our little sphere of influence, instead of just pretending like we're up there with like America and the global police. America is, no, I read that part. It's working in Iran, Gaza. What are you referring to, Indoctrinathan? I missed something potentially. All right, so what did I want to look at next in terms of all this China stuff? I think I wanted to watch the full interview that he had coming home from China and see what Albo actually has to say about all of this. Because, like, it's always secondhand bullshit. I want to hear what... It's always off the cuff, somebody else's... Oh, for fuck's sake, come on. Why was it... This was working just before I even checked it. Oh, God, that's so good. Hulk Hogan. God, I love Hulk Hogan. Oh, he's dead? What the fuck? Dies and path to ceasefire in Gaza. Oh, no way. He was hilarious at Trump rallies. That's unfortunate. Ceasefire. I think that calls recent Gaza completely indefensible. That is not what I wanted at all. That's outrageous. This should work. I just had viewed this. You freak. I'm going to try this again. We shouldn't get bombed with ads. I'm going to try this DuckDuckGo one. If we watch it through this, we don't get ads. So the story goes. Let's have a look. Here we go. Let's see if we get ads.
Oh,
we got hit with an ad.
A healthy gut means a happy you. So boost your gut health and immunity with Valia's deliciously creamy yogurt, made with billions of probiotics. Get gut happy every day with Valia.
Boo. Gotta go, gang.
We're all for the 4x4 drive.
Happy Friday. 4AS, it's good. Yeah, R.I.P. the Hulkster. Yeah, what a character. What a character. Manufacturing consent convo before that. Oh, okay. Right, in Gaza. Yeah, it's not... Yeah, interesting. Good point. Is it really working in Gaza? Good point. I remember when he said he'd never let his daughter date an N-word on live radio. Then his daughter dated a black guy. Yeah, what a character, man. What a character. Have they not done a dialectical material analysis of Australia's global position? Those mineral resources mentioned by Dilemmas is a good point. In addition to the fact that we export majority of our foodstuffs, we need to stop letting private corporations take the fruits. All good with ads. We can sort it out. The show must go on. I'm sorry. I apologize. Have they done a dialectical material analysis of Australia's global position? If you're asking about whether the Chinese have, fucking oath they do. I was like watching some stuff about China, I don't know, a few months ago, and there was like, there's Marxist schools in China, and there's like Marxist graduates and stuff like that. And like their job is to work for like the Chinese government as Marxist scholars, and they go back and they read all of Marx's works, and they look at things from a dialectical materialist perspective, and they go into Hegelian dialectics and all this sort of stuff. And they're key advisors to people in the CCP at all levels. And so they have like Marxists who would definitely use dialectical thinking. They have Marxists who are like, you know, an advisor to the party or a politician or something like that. Like, how interesting is that? So like their foreign policy, their general economic policy from the inside is like littered with people that have a Marxist analysis of capitalism. And so they used Marxian critique to figure out like what they should be doing and how they should be responding to a capitalistic environment and a capitalistic mode of production generally. It's crazy. And so like, I would love to go to those schools. Yes, I know, right? Could you imagine going to but I'm assuming it would all be in Mandarin or something like that. But like, you know, I thought about that. Like, could you imagine going to a Marxist school in China and getting like a diploma or something, or a master's in dialectical material analysis in global politics? And like you look at the dialectical relationships between two countries, like Australia, like China is looking at Australia from a perspective of it's a trading partner, and we look at it from the perspective of like, oh, we don't, whatever the Americans say, we'll just follow their line. It's just like, are we thinking about this materially? Like, come on, please, Daddy, son, take me under your Marxist wing, son. That's hilarious. Yeah, I would go to a Marxist school for sure. My Hulk missing got me CC'd so bad. Sorry, not sorry. Oh, censored again. You're in trouble today. Hulk Hogan was a racist. Was a racist what? Piece of shit. And I'll never let him die peacefully. Damn. Rest in piss, Hulkster. Damn. That's fiery. That's fiery as fuck. Yeah, but like incredibly entertaining character. Like as a character, right? Like, because that's what he is. He's a character. Is he even really a real person? We'll never know, but he's definitely a character. All right, I want to hear what Albanese actually has to say for himself, if you know what I mean. I can put these back on. I might speed it up a little bit as well.
To be with you here in Chengdu.
I keep being asked when I'm talking back to Australia about what we got out of this trip. People do tend to think of these things in transactional terms, but I'm interested in how you compare this with, say, that first meeting you had with President Xi.
Show me in the doll where Hulk hurt you.
In Indonesia a couple of years ago. The importance of this really is about the relationship, which is something that's a bit more intangible, isn't it?
That's right, and this is about stabilising.
He was a Pinkerton. I had no idea. I had no idea he was union busting. Like, what's his role in union busting? Like, as a huge dude, does he get out there and literally bust unions? Or are you talking about like him from an administrative standpoint? Got Jesse Ventura fired for trying to unionize. And there you go. Well, look, again, he is a character. Like, literally, the Hulk is an actual character. So he was an interesting character. Yeah, send us the video, please. Put it in the cord. Put it in the disc. We'll have a look. All right, let me...
In the relationship.
I'm interested in how you compare this with, say, that first meeting you had with President Xi in Indonesia a couple of years ago. The importance of this really is about the relationship, which is something that's a bit more intangible, isn't it?
That's right, and this is about stabilising the relationship. It was at a bad point prior to our election in 2022. Since then, we have seen over $20 billion of trade impediments removed, and we're now exporting large amounts, in some cases, more than we were before, barley into China, as well as wine, our other agricultural exports, as well as our resources exports. And one of the really significant meetings that we've had here is on steel decarbonisation. Iron ore represents by far our largest export by value, and overwhelmingly it comes here to China. China produces over 50% of the world's steel. If we're going to address the emissions reduction that the globe...
Like from an old school Marxist analysis of capitalism, Industrial Revolution shit, like 50% of the world's steel, like that's where it was at in the Industrial Revolution. Steel manufacturing was the thing that brought us into the modern age, and they take care of 50% of it using our iron ore.
Needs, then steel decarbonisation has to be a part of that. And the idea of combining on green metals, green steel production, is something that is very significant to take the world forward, as well as being in our national economic interest.
The business community had some ideas on both sides about how to further expand the relationship. They were talking about things like free economic zones. Do you think that we can now move forward in the relationship, expand it into even further areas?
Well, we certainly can move forward in the relationship. We've seen a stabilisation, and that's been really important. Building trust takes time, but it's also about relationships. And our relationship with China is about trade, it's about tourism, it's about engagement in our region. It's also, of course, about our people-to-people links. Our 1.4 million strong Chinese-Australian diaspora provides an important linkage between Australia and China that is so important. We're a part of this region, and China has grown enormously. This city we are in now, 21 million people. When you go through these extraordinary wide streets, look at what they're doing with urban development, including sustainable development, some of the best examples in the world of using renewable energy, of having the idea of a city where everyone can walk within 15 minutes of services and jobs and housing, is, I think, an example of the growth that has occurred in China. Now, Australia has an important relationship with our own region, not just with China, with ASEAN, with the Pacific, but China has to be a part of that.
Well, people talk about the tightrope you have to walk in China.
I don't know if Australia's part of ASEAN. I didn't know that. Let me double check that, please. Is Australia part of ASEAN? Ah, okay. So what's he talking about then? Maybe he's just saying that we need to have a relationship, or need to relate to it. It's not a member of ASEAN, but it's a strategic partner, has a very close relationship with the bloc. 10 member countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, Thailand, Brunei, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and Cambodia. I wonder what ASEAN's going to do about Thailand and Cambodia, hey? Is not part of Southeast Asia geographically or politically, so it's not eligible. Ah, okay. It's a major partner. Partner since 1974. Comprehensive strategic partner in 2021. It became one of ASEAN's first comprehensive strategic partners. The ASEAN-Australia Summit. Australia regularly attends the ASEAN Summits as a guest. Oh, that's good. It's important for us, man. Far out. Very important.
Between that economic
to be with our own region, not just with China, with ASEAN, with the Pacific, but China has to be a part of that.
Well, people talk about the tightrope you have to walk in China between that economic relationship that we have and obviously the sort of national security issues attached to the fact that it's obviously growing in military strength in front of our eyes. How tricky is that tightrope as far as you're concerned for Australia?
You've just got to be clear and consistent. We have different political systems, we have different values, but we shouldn't allow our differences to define us. We should acknowledge what they are, be prepared to engage with them constructively. It's a part of, if you like, my three phrases I consistently use and have used since the time I was Labor leader from opposition, is that we should cooperate where we can, disagree where we must, and there are areas where we will continue to disagree, but engage in our national interest.
What should Australians make of China's actions in Australia's waters recently in the wake of this visit? You made a reference to it in your remarks to President Xi. He seemed to listen to it but not really sort of respond. I mean, it was interesting that he didn't feel the need to respond back either on the port of Darwin or Taiwan. I mean, where do you think the relationship goes in terms of China's preparedness to go into our waters?
Well, when it comes to military exercises, of course, in international waters, Australia participates regularly in exercises, including around the South China Sea and the region where we are now. And so we shouldn't be surprised that there will be exercises conducted. What we should do is seek greater clarification, greater notice to make sure there's no misadventure there. But as I said at the time, we regretted that. We didn't want to see that happening, but we did acknowledge that it was within international law.
China portrays itself, particularly at the moment, as a peacekeeper and as a sort of calm and steady hand, the adult in the room, particularly in contrast with the Trump administration. But the reality is that Chinese troops have...
That was a cheap shot. What are they trying to say about Trump? Eh? He's not an adult? Then be fighting words. Hulk was a shit character. Ric Flair for life. The most styling and profiling. It's weird sky poos are upset. Our PM went to China to discuss trade negotiations with our biggest trading partner. You know what I was thinking? If we get the time, we should watch some Sky News stuff and see what they have to say about the PM going to China. And like, you know, how he's forsaken the Australian people. He's shown his true colours. He won't speak to Trump, but he's gone to China. He's a traitor. Treasonous. And that should carry a death sentence, eh? Evil Albo. The more Albo ignores Trump, the more it's going to get under his skin. And I'm here for it. You know what? That's what I have been thinking as well. Like, can we just take a moment to realise or analyse what Albo is doing here? Everyone is going to kiss the ring, right? Everyone is jumping to kiss the ring when it comes to Trump. And like, if you've ever dealt with like negotiation situations in a business setting, you've ever been around the table at a big governmental meeting, there are some big players in the room that like everybody has to basically, I don't say that nicely, has to suck up to, let me just say, and, you know, pledge their loyalty to, etc., etc. And when everyone's doing it, you know, the first few people, fine, you expect it, but like, you know, the last few people, it doesn't do them any favors. And so like, if Albo is not the first in line and he's at the back somewhere, it's not going to be any favors to him or Australia. So if he's ignoring it altogether, that's actually a good thing, I believe, for a Trump-style negotiating tactic, because Trump will be expecting it. And what's even adding more of an insult potentially to that is that if Australia is setting up good relations with China, that makes it even more important for Trump or the Americans to actually want to come to the party and build up their own relationships with Australia. So, you know, I think actually it's quite an interesting game. It's not a bad game. It's just being like, no, I'm not going to kiss the ring. And even more than that, I'm just going to go for a fucking holiday in China just to stick it up the Americans a little bit, because that gives you better bargaining power. So like, if I was the Prime Minister of Australia right now, I'd be doing something like that too. I'd be ignoring the big fish himself, Trumpy boy, because everyone else has already kissed the ring, or people that have wanted to have kissed, and like, you've missed the first round of kissing. And then like, you know, go to the opposition, go to somebody else and like flirt with them a little bit, eh? Go pick up yourself a Panda. Eh? Do some trading over there and just be like, look, we can sustain ourselves. We don't need you, America. And that gives you a much better position at the bargaining table, so you don't have to just lick asshole. You can be like, yeah, we've already done our own stuff. We'll talk to you if you're interested in really talking to us. Play this video on DuckDuckGo. Oh, I can play it like that. Yeah, I thought I could just do it that way. Yeah, I must have just clicked it wrong. I'll do that with the next one. Garen Bensinger. The Jesse Ventura interview. Hulk Hogan ratted me out to Vince McMahon. That's interesting. Me and the boys finding out Hulk died. That one city Albo is in contains almost the whole population of Australia. I know. Isn't that mental? They know how to do urban development. I'm glad Albo is thinking of these things. I would love to see cars being sufficiently deprioritized as transport method. They fucking suck. Yes, like the history of urban planning in the 20th century was fuck humans, build around cars. And so we've planned all of our urban landscapes, and Australia is definitely prey to this. We've developed all of our urban landscapes around vehicles, like how to get vehicles in everywhere, how to get people to be able to park their cars and all that sort of stuff. And like, he's talking about them being a 15-minute city, so you can walk within 15 minutes and you get to public transport, you get to social services, you get to work. 15-minute walking cities. That's like the apex of the planning world in terms of good urban design outcomes. And so if you're in a city with 20 million people, like that's New York we're talking about. And that's probably not even a large Chinese city. Let's be honest, there's bigger. 20 million people, the logistics of that from an urban planning perspective, from a sustainability perspective, forget about it. So like, yeah, talking about sustainable urban development, it is good like to go over and see how these people handle these types of situations. Dilemma is America needs our location to protect their power over the Pacific. Yes, we've got good bargaining chips. The 5% GDP on defense is Trump's big ask, and Albo is refusing to engage in the game altogether. Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because like the responses I've seen from Albo in the face of the 5% rise it or you're in trouble kind of thing, it's just like, we can make our own fucking choices. Thank you very much. We'll decide. And like they haven't even made the decision. They're doing their AUKUS stuff at the moment, like their AUKUS review. They haven't even really committed to the fact that they're going to provide those submarines anyway. It might not be cost effective for them to continue to fund this project. So, you know, he's playing a very, like if you're talking about negotiations, like this is it. They say you spend 5%. He says, no, thank you. We're independent. We can make our own mind. Everybody's supposed to be reaching out to him because of the tariffs, and he hasn't reached out to him yet, and then instead gone to your largest trading partner for a little bit of a, like I said, a holiday and a meet and greet so you can shake hands and take lovely pictures. That's the way to negotiate, motherfucker. Like, honestly, it's not just waiting, it's doing things that advance your own interests, so you've got less care anyway. You're less screwed over. So, yeah, it is a very interesting tactic, I must admit. Very interesting. Let's see what he has to say. If you look into World War II history, America pointed to Australia as a pathway to invade the US from its south. Yeah. So we are incredibly important. And we should not forget that. Which is, you know, someone like ScoMo or Dutton, like they would have just completely not know how to handle that one, just for any reason to suck up to Trumpy boy.
Now been captured in Ukraine. Does that portrait of itself as a peacemaker really stand as troops, particularly in contrast with the Trump administration? But the reality is that Chinese troops have now been captured in Ukraine. Does that portrait of itself as a peacemaker really stand up?
Well, we made our position very clear about Ukraine to the Chinese leadership here over the past days. We do have differences. We do have differences with some of the actions of China in our own region, let alone in Ukraine, and we point those out. We, for example, in the Pacific, are very clear that we want the Pacific family to look after our own security and don't want to see an increased military presence in the region. Now, we'll continue to do that. We engage with our Pacific neighbours just as we engage constructively with our ASEAN neighbours as well.
In your John Curtin oration recently, you seem to recast the beginning of the US relationship in different terms to the way we've thought about it until now, really focusing on, you know, it as a statement of Australian independence, which obviously has a particular context at the moment. The story that appeared this week about Elbridge Colby and war in Taiwan and submarines, it suggests a certain level.
Elbridge Colby. This person keeps coming up again and again.
Elbridge Colby.
All right, Elbridge Colby. Let's have a look to see this. This is the dude. Elbridge Colby. And Elbridge Andrew Colby is an American national security policy professional who is currently under Secretary of Defense for Policy. So why is he having negotiations with Australians? He's not even like under the Secretary of Defense. Harvard University, of course. Yale. And they're all from the same batch of empirical. We are the Americans' shield, yeah. Yeah, we are. Colby believes China is principal threat faced by the United States. He believes the US should shift its military resources to Asia to prevent a Chinese takeover of Taiwan. Containment policy, anyone? You got to contain those Chinese. Colby moved to Tokyo in 1986 when his father was appointed head of the first Boston's Tokyo office and returned when he was 13. Interesting. So he's familiar with Asia. President Trump nominated Colby to serve under Secretary of Defense for policy for his second term, despite support of the influential MAGA figures like the Vice President J.D. Vance and influencer Charlie Kirk. His nomination drew criticism from Republican Party defense hawks like Tom Cotton. He identifies as a realist. He believes China is a principal threat faced by the United States. This is all over Project 2025, as we've been reading. Like China is enemy number one, and we need to. The Americans need to stop thinking of China as like some type of economic, competitor, and like start thinking of them as an enemy. They are an enemy of the American state, and they want to bring this Cold War out. He advocates for the U.S. military shift its military planning and resources to prepare for a conflict over Taiwan and supports bolstering U.S. industrial capacity. In a Time article he co-authored with the Heritage Foundation, Colby wrote that we need to be absolutely clear. Without question, the top external threat to America is China, by far. He is a prioritizer, believing the US to have limited military resources and thus supporting a reorientation of US military resources away from the Middle East and Europe to Asia and China. Interesting. So this is why they're leaving the Europeans high and dry when it comes to Russia. It's just like pull out of Europe and let's get our stuff going in China. China. That's very interesting. Foreign policy describes him as the loudest and perhaps most cogent voice in Washington, advocating a complete shift away from Europe, NATO, and Russia, and towards the growing challenge from China. There we go. So this guy, this Colby, Elbridge Colby, he's the one that has been pushing and probing for Australia's commitment to, if Taiwan gets invaded, is Australia going to be there? He's the one who's pushing for this at the moment. And Australia is kind of like, the Australian politicians, anyway, in power, obviously not the coalition, the no-alition, very clever, that one was. The Australian politicians at the moment are kind of like, well, no, we're not giving you pre-commitments. Why the fuck would we give you pre-commitments for? This is just a hypothetical situation. Can we just calm the fuck down, please? But it's this guy, this Elbridge Colby. So does Elbridge Colby, does he report then to Hegseth? I wonder. Does Elbridge Colby report to Pete Hegseth? Colby was appointed under 2005. Colby was appointed under Secretary of Defense for Policy, making him the top policy official in the Pentagon under Secretary Pete Hegseth. Okay, he does. Explicitly tasked by Hegseth to lead the development of the 2025 National Defense Strategy. Serves under Pete Hegseth. Yeah. Interesting. I'm getting CC'd straight up. Yep, I tried to say Colby looks like a proper TW. Can you write that in the censored comments? Oh, twat. I was like, what's a TW? Yeah, okay. He does look like a bit of a twat, doesn't he? Like a typical American twat. Hey? Look at that guy. Look at that photo. Hey. I'm here to serve the American people as long as it aligns with my personal interests. here I am shaking the hands of some Koreans and Japanese people. They're the type of Asians I like, not the Chinese. They're the worst. So this is the guy. This is the Chinese hawk. He wants war with China, and he wants it under any terms possible. And this is the policy at the moment. We have been reading Project 2025, and the conservative mission for the American president for 2025 is get the fuck out of NATO and Europe, get them to pay for it, and China is their biggest threat. It is threatening the Americans at home, in the sense that, like, not physically at home, but like in their comfort zone. They are hegemon. They control the world. China is disputing that. Economically, it's displacing them as being top dog, and like militarily, it would seem that China is now a larger threat than ever, because it is also investing in high-tech warfare. It's got a huge military. It doesn't have the naval capacity at all. Not compared to the Americans anyway. No one does. The American Navy is like 3 times the size of it is larger than the next 3 players, I should say. I should reiterate that. Larger than the next 3 players combined. But like, you know, China is a military threat, and especially from a tech perspective, they've got some interesting technology, and they're involved knee-deep in the AI race at the moment. The ye old Oriental opposition. Yes, and they're hardcore all over the Oriental opposition at the moment, the conservatives. They really think that, I think they just see the writing on the wall, that America has just lost its position. It's lost its position to the ye old Chinese, or like, it's just not conclusive anymore that they are outright superpower number 1, and they don't have to take anyone else into consideration. They now have to compete with a large, burgeoning Chinese economy, who is also politically active and influencing geopolitics. America doesn't want to have to share this space with anyone, and China is muscled its way in there. And so they are public enemy number 1, if you think of it from that perspective. They shouldn't be there at all. America should have the entire buffet, the world buffet, for itself, and be able to do whatever it wants with its global policy. And China's muscled its way in there. Jerry Poppins, bringing a boat to a drone fight is a little silly. MysterE, interesting. Maybe you still need boats. You still need boats. And yeah, the future of warfare is very different when you think of drones. You're right. Very, very different. But you still need a navy. It's absolutely necessary, because, you know, drones don't go as far. They're not able to cover as much distance either, depending, I guess, where you deploy them from. But yes, drone sub already out there. Yeah, so here's Elbridge Colby. So this is the guy, this is the conservative promise for America douchebag, twat, as some would say, that is stirring up a little bit of fucking political problems at the moment, because he wants Australia to commit to basically fighting for Taiwan, when, again, the Americans haven't even done that. Like, Trump has, like, in February, like when he first started, was just like, I don't know about defending them Taiwanese. I'll think about it. I'll get back to you, Barry.
And war and Taiwan and submarines, it suggests a certain level of presumption in the US about the relationship with Australia, doesn't it?
We, of course, are a sovereign nation. And John Curtin, certainly, when he chose to stand up to the British and assert Australia's right to defend ourselves and to bring home our troops, was an assertion of that. And he looked to America, of course, was an important part of that as well. Now, since then, the US alliance that was formalised some years later, but essentially can be seen as beginning there in the heat of the Second World War. The US alliance has been our most important. It remains our most important alliance. That is a critical relationship that we have for our defence and security, but that doesn't abrogate the need for Australia to have a say in our own defence and security relationships.
It was a bit sort of presumptuous, though, wasn't it, for him to suggest that Australia and Japan should commit to this when the US itself hasn't said what it
Well,
would
the
do.
United States has had a policy of strategic ambiguity over these issues. It's one that's been shared by Australia. We don't want to see any change to the status quo. We have supported the One China policy, as does the United States, as part of the recognition of China that occurred, in our case, under Gough Whitlam.
How confident are you?
See, there it is. We recognised One China, and so did the Americans. Like most people around the world, anyone who was in the UN, they recognized China's sovereign claim over Taiwan. And everyone forgets that. So I understand the importance of Taiwanese sovereignty, and I'm sure the native Taiwanese population, didn't like the Chinese coming in there under Chiang Kai-shek either, but that's old, that's history now. But the Chinese have not forgotten. They have not forgotten that Taiwan is their claim, and it should never have been used as a political pawn in the first place in their perspective. And we've all recognized it. Avalava says the Navy's become less relevant with drones and hypersonic weapons, though still important. If you're into that kind of thing. Yeah, well, again, in a world where you have regional interests and you still have trade, you do need a navy because people still get on boats. And so until people stop using boats altogether for commerce and all that type of stuff, then yeah. And until everybody in the world is down with drones, everybody's got a fleet of their own drones that they can manufacture on demand all the time. I would say it's only going to be a handful of players around the world, the countries that are big enough and advanced enough, technologically speaking, to be able to have armies and armies and armies of drones, to be able to undertake extreme modern warfare. But most of the other people that aren't in on that game aren't going to be able to. I'd like a fleet of drones. Yeah, they're not going to be able to, engage in that warfare. But yeah, yes, the big ships are very, very easily brought down, but they've always been brought down just to live stream. Yeah, a fleet of drones just so you could capture all of it, right? And live stream that shit non-stop. Yeah, interesting.
Are you in the Trump administration's current commitment to the Asia Pacific?
Well, I'm confident that it is in the United States' interest.
Australia makes paper plane drones that are military grade. What? Paper plane drones, not actual paper plane drones, that are military grade for less than 1,000K per drone.
Of course, they have a major presence in the Pacific.
To the Asia Pacific.
Well, I'm confident that it is in the United States' interests. Of course, they have a major presence in their Pacific nation there, and their naval presence based in Hawaii is one where Australia participates with our allies there in Hawaii. And I've visited the centre there and engaged with the leadership there in the Pacific. And I think that the United States will continue to be engaged. That's an important thing for their presence, and we welcome it.
When you look at the Trump administration's actions in recent times, does it make you question their reliability as an ally? I mean, if Donald Trump's making decisions to unilaterally bomb a country or impose tariffs on its allies, it doesn't suggest it's a very reliable ally, does it?
Well, we continue to express our support for the relationship with the United States. It is our most important ally. We continue to have constructive relations with the US. I note on tariffs, there's no country that has received a better deal then Australia. I have engaged constructively with members of the Trump administration. I've had other members of my government, and indeed President Trump's inauguration, of course, was attended by Penny Wong. All of the Quad foreign ministers were invited there, and I saw that very much as a sign of the importance that President Trump places in the Quad. And in the discussions I've had with him, they have been constructive, and that they certainly have not engaged any negativity around AUKUS. And when I visited the United States for my state visit and met with so many members of Congress and the Senate, there was overwhelming support for the AUKUS arrangements.
The Curtin speech also reflects a very rapidly changing world, even since the time he first became Prime Minister. Some of those changes involve other countries. Israel seems to have changed its actions. We've now seen condemnation from the ICC and the ICJ. The Spanish Prime Minister recently spoke of a catastrophe of genocide. Do we need to change our thinking about Israel?
We need to always engage in the world as it is rather than as we would like it to be. And Israel's actions, many of the actions of the Netanyahu government, including by its ministers, have led my government indeed to sanction ministers in the Netanyahu government. We would not have thought that was on the agenda in 2022 when I was elected. Australia is a long-term supporter and indeed played a role in the creation of the State of Israel. But at that time, it's important to remember that two states were envisaged. And Australia, and certainly my government, has continued to support two states in the Middle East, the State of Israel and the State of Palestine. And we want Israel to continue to exist within secure borders and to be able to live without the threat of terrorists such as Hamas engaging in the sort of atrocities we saw on October 7. But Palestinians have a legitimate aspiration for a state of their own and for to be able to achieve prosperity. And that is something that has been a bipartisan position as well, going back to John Howard said there can be no peace in the Middle East without dealing with the Palestinian question.
Beyond the actual politics of it though, Prime Minister, what chance is there of having two states when Gaza's basically been reduced to rubble? In the West Bank there's further incursions by Israel. I mean, what's going to actually realistically be there of a Palestinian state, if it was even possible?
The globe has to play a role in it.
And what's our role?
And obviously the role of the United States will be central to that. Australia isn't a central player in the Middle East, but what we can do is continue to do what we have done, which is to take a principled position. We opposed unequivocally the atrocity that occurred on October 7. We have called for ceasefire consistently. We've called for the release of hostages. We've also called for the aid to be able to flow to the people of Gaza. And we've called out Israel for its actions that have led, of course, to such appalling conditions and loss of innocent life. In the resolution that was carried in the Parliament just days after October 7, I think will stand the history of well, because when you look at that, at the time we spoke about opposing the loss of innocent life, whether it be Israeli or Palestinian.
With respect, things have escalated. We're now seeing Palestinians regularly killed while waiting for food and water. Do we need to start changing our view of what's happening in Israel?
Regularly killed. Like set up like little traps for them to walk in, and they get like, you know, they literally are like shooting fish in a barrel. It's fucking horrendous stuff.
Well, that is completely indefensible, and we've called that out each and every time that that has occurred. And I've issued a number of joint statements, for example, with the Canadian and New Zealand Prime.
So good. It's such a bourgeois response to stuff, isn't it? Like, this is bourgeois politics at its finest. It's like, oh, it's inexcusable. You can't do that. I have issued letter after letter explaining how dissatisfied I am with this situation. People are dying, and so I have issued multiple letters. I'm expecting a response in a timely manner. Thank you very much. So bourgeois.
Ministers, we've joined the international community, which overwhelmingly has condemned actions such as that. And the other thing that we've done is to say in private what we say publicly as well, which is that Israel, and we say this as a friend, sometimes you've got to be straight and upfront. And I certainly have said to, for example, President Herzog, who I've known for a long period of time, that Israel is losing support by its own actions, and that some of its actions are completely indefensible.
Australians really haven't had much of a chance to debate AUKUS because it was signed and both sides agreed to it. Can you assure us that it did not come with any pre-commitments to US actions? I'm not talking just about Taiwan, but to what extent does it lock us into military actions by the United States?
Well, Australia is a sovereign nation and governments of the day make decisions on behalf of the Australian government. And certainly I cannot envisage a circumstance where an Australian government would give up that sovereignty. Now, I note in recent days most of the coalition have said that that's the case. Angus Taylor has said something different, and it's up to them to really clarify exactly what their position is.
Is a forward defence strategy, which is at the heart of the AUKUS deal, really the appropriate one given these changing times? Would it be better to focus on defence of Australia? And is there room for the AUKUS deal to morph if the Americans decide to walk away from the idea of us actually buying submarines?
What we've done is invest in our capability, but also invest in our relationships. When it comes to our capability, the obtaining by Australia of nuclear-powered submarines has a number of advantages over other pieces of military equipment. The fact that a nuclear-powered submarine can stay under, submerged for longer, that it can travel further, that it's quieter, that it's less detectable, means that it's an investment which my government agreed with the former government was in Australia's national interest.
Well, finally, Prime Minister, Parliament comes back after the election for the first time next week. What are your priorities going to be?
Well, it's going to be a big fortnight. The first thing that we will do is to introduce legislation fulfilling our commitment to reduce student debt by 20%. On the following day, on Thursday, we'll introduce legislation to deal with some of the issues that have arisen in childcare, to make sure that there's greater confidence about safety in the childcare sector and to allow us to withdraw funding from childcare.
It's David in the house. Welcome. How we doing? Oh my God, Trump couldn't ask for a better... What's a better toady? What do you mean in this context? Tell me, please. Who are you talking about specifically? It's not in relation to Eldridge, is it? Colby?
Centres that stray from what should be happening of keeping children safe. But we've got 24 new members. So one of the priorities we have at the beginning of the term is making sure that they can fully participate. There's 24 members on the government side who are new. So there'll be a range of first speeches in the first fortnight. We really wanted to...
Can you imagine the state of drone technology by the time we're supposed to get these subs? That's pretty funny, isn't it? Yeah. It's going to be a very different landscape. We did some research into Helsing AI just recently. Daniel Ek, CEO of Spotify, pouring his hundreds of millions of dollars as a billionaire who has exploited artists around the world, is now turning to artificial intelligence, defense technologies, and drone making, which is the future of warfare. And this is where it's all going. And here we are talking about nuclear subs like it's the 2000s. Come on.
To bring Parliament back. Parliament didn't have to come back until August, but we brought it back a bit earlier so that they can then fully participate. So I'm really looking forward to Parliament resuming. We've got a big agenda.
I think they're not going to talk about China anymore, so let's go. Let's have a look at this paper drone. I thought you were joking when you said paper drone, but there is actual paper drones here. Treated cardboard, apparently, but let's check this out. Is this a YouTube video? I wonder if I can use FreeTube for this. Dun, 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 dun.
This is an IKEA-style paper killer drone. Do you know about the flat pack killer drones made from paper? These cardboard drones, made in Australia and shipped in pieces, were originally designed for delivery purposes. With a range of 120 kilometers and the ability to carry up to 6 kilograms of payload, they've been turned into an effective weapon due to their low radar visibility. Built with just simple glue, these cardboard drones cost around $3,500.
That's crazy. We're made in Australia. All right. Good old Australians. Nuclear subs, bro. We're fighting AI Furbies out there. Yeah, that was mental. That was mental. Well produced, crazy ending scene. They're shooting toys and getting killed by toys. Or large, I guess, depending on the scenery. But yeah, crazy. That was funny, actually. They actually cost about 850 AU. There you go. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen. If you would like a drone and it can carry up to 6 kilos, no further than Australia. Manufacturing powerhouse. Right here, ladies and gentlemen. Right here. You've heard it. All right, so what I want to have a look at now is, I just want to know what he's up to, though, because this guy's he's one hell of a bad smell. He just won't go away. But ScoMo's been up to no good. And let's have a look at what ScoMo has been saying about China. Because he's gone over to America, it would seem, and has fronted a committee in America, ScoMo. Like, why is he over there in the first place? I have no idea. But yeah, ScoMo's been over speaking to the Americans about how the Chinese are manipulating Australia to, meet their own special interests, and we're falling for it hook, line, and sinker. And so let's see. So if I click on this, if I click on the video itself, no, it takes me to
lower
YouTube.
shelf prices.
But if I click on that there, I can watch
Former
it.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison has told a US congressional committee China is now using charm and flattery to manipulate Australia, and we're in danger of going to sleep on the threat. Let's go live to Tim Lester in Canberra this afternoon. Tim, why was Mr Morrison asked to give evidence in the US in the first place?
Well, Hugh, Mr Morrison's term as Prime Minister up until May 2022 coincided with a stunning slump in China relations, a time during which China slapped on bans or tariffs on critical agricultural products out of Australia, wine, beef, barley and others, after Mr Morrison himself had led the charge for a global investigation into the source of the COVID pandemic, which upset Beijing greatly. So Mr Morrison, seen in many parts of the US as courageous for his standing up to China, and most especially in the committee on the Hill in Washington that is devoted to examining the China threat.
I witnessed and experienced firsthand the dramatic escalation of the CCP's regime's assertive and aggressive behaviour towards the countries in the Indo-Pacific region. Above all, I would highlight the need to never become casual about the potential threat.
Well, Tim, the timing really is something here, considering the Prime Minister's high-profile China visit just last week.
Well, Hugh, the issue was certainly alluded to, though Mr Morrison never spoke of it directly. Obviously, the visit last week not only colourful, but played up the trade potential between the countries and the solid relations now between the countries, the improvement in relations. Mr Morrison alluding to the fact that China...
Panda diplomacy, literally. Panda diplomacy. Hey, look at that. It's a panda. ScoMo is still such a joke. But what's he fucking doing? Like, why are the Americans even listening to him for? Like, he's a fucking joke. He's an embarrassment. Like, it's more than that. He's really fucking embarrassing. So why they got him over? I'm going to have to scratch into this one a little bit more. I want to know why he's over there. And what committee is this? Committee on washed up politicians from random places around the world addressing American Congress. Like, fucking imagine being part of that committee. God damn.
Has been particularly currying favour in this regard and has used the change of government in this regard. But he also warns that that's exactly what China wants, and says he sees China seeking to play down its security threat to the rest of the world. Hugh.
National Security Editor Tim Lester in Canberra.
God damn. Scott Morrison warns US Select Committee against... All right, let's have a look.
During your time as Prime Minister,
China issued a now infamous list of 14 grievances targeting Australia's domestic laws and sovereign decisions. What should that list tell us about the nature of PRC coercion and the kinds of values it seeks to undermine? And
Oh, what? It took your comment away? I saw your comment for a second, David, and you got done. Did you get censored? Damn. Bolsonaro gonna speak after ScoMo then? Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. The committee of disgraced politicians, embarrassing world politicians speaking to the Americans. David, whatever you said, we do have a censored comment section. So, yeah. I think it was something about the Americans giving away free subs. Like, you're even across that, David. Does that mean, if you've heard about this, the Americans have talked about this? I didn't think this would even register in American news because Australia is just such a non-issue to most Americans.
In democracies, coercion and the kinds of values it seeks to undermine in democracies.
I think fundamentally it demonstrates that the CCP fundamentally has a problem with representative democracies, and there are some irreconcilable differences between an authoritarian regime in China, as much as an authoritarian regime in Russia or Iran, for that matter, and the activities of free and open states. Late Prime Minister Abe, who the Ambassador know well, and I knew well also, spoke of a free and open Indo-Pacific. That is a threat and a challenge to regime security in China. And I think
he's such a smug fuck, isn't he? Just looking at him talk and he's smiling while he's saying, "Hey, authoritarian regimes, free and open China." Such a smug prick.
You have to be clear-eyed about this and not pretend that there is somehow that this is going to be resolved through discussion. Discussion is fine. Engagement is good. It's better than the alternative. But if we think that's going to produce a change in the mindset in Beijing about what their objectives are, then
such a punchable face.
We're frankly kidding ourselves. So you worked to coexist, to avoid conflict. That requires deterrence and a wide-eyed appreciation of what the Chinese state is all about. At every point, even the most moderate of their leaders, like Jiang Zemin, were very clear about the fact that even when they entered most favoured nation
I wouldn't mind getting into some good trouble if presented the opportunity, eh?
Status. They still said to their officials that the West, and particularly the United States, is still looking to see us destroy our socialist system. They won't change. So we have to deal with that reality. I mean, those 14 points that of grievances that they tabled, I remember I tabled them at a G7 meeting in Carbis Bay to all the G7 leaders. It was a G7 plus meeting. And I asked the simple question, which of you would relent on any of these points?
All right. What were the 17 grievances that China lodged with Australia when Scott Morrison was Prime Minister? November 2020, China Embassy in Canberra presented a dossier of 14 grievances against Australia. Blocking or rejecting over 10 Chinese investment proposals on opaque national security grounds, banning Huawei and ZTZ, foreign interference legislation allegedly targeting China without evidence, politicizing and stigmatizing non-exchanges and cooperation, including revoking visas for Chinese scholars, calling for an international independent inquiry into COVID-19 origins, interference in Xinjiang, Hong Kong and Taiwan affairs, being the first non-littoral state to make statements on the South China Sea to the UN, siding with the US in anti-China campaigns, scrutinizing state and local agreements with foreign governments targeted at curbing Victoria's Belt and Road deal. Interesting. Funding anti-China think tanks to spread lies about Xinjiang and alleged Chinese infiltration, conducting dawn raids and seizures of Chinese journalists' homes without charges or explanations, thinly veiled allegations of China-based cyber attacks, which China claims lacks evidence, outrageous condemnation of Chinese Communist Party by MPs, and racist comments towards Chinese or Asian people. I can believe that one. Unfriendly or antagonistic reporting by Australian media, poisoning the atmosphere of bilateral relations. Interesting. Scott Morrison. Such a douchebag. Albo. He's so obsequious. Like a Soviet Communist Party member trying to reassure Stalin of his loyalty. Wow. Give us more context there, please. If you're talking about Scott Morrison over here. Very interesting. Yeah, he's definitely trying to convince this select committee of how loyal he is. This guy. This is ScoMo, by the way.
The answer was none. These are just the simple behaviours of transparent representative democracies with market-based economies. And so know that you believe those things, keep investing in those things, and understand what the red lines are that are produced by holding those beliefs. The other thing I would say is make sure that you're building your internal resilience to coercion, and that you mentioned in your opening remarks, Mr. Chairman, that a whole-of-society approach is necessary. I completely, 100% agree. And our response dealt with everything from interference in our political system through ensuring that we kept an open mic for free speech in our parliaments and media and so on. You need to build the internal resilience, and that means an appreciation of the potential threat. And that is somewhat in jeopardy in Australia. Most recently, the Lowy Institute completed a survey, which for the first time in quite a number of years, there is a greater value on the economic partnership with China than concerns about the security threat, and I'll table that for the committee. That is an objective of the CCP, that Western democracies will go to sleep on the threat.
There it is. You've heard it here. Don't worry about the economics of it. We should just be worried about the talk that China is a threat. Don't worry about the economy. Like, are these still the liberals that we're talking about here? I thought they were for the economy. So much for that. Right, let's look at some Sky News.
Get a massive 120 gigs for just 35.
Boo.
Up with the former Deputy Prime Minister and former Nationals leader Michael McCormack. Good to talk to you, Michael. First up, on China,
G'day, Chris.
Who's right on the China relationship, Twiggy Forrest or Scott Morrison?
Scott Morrison, every day of every week.
Does it worry you that Twiggy Forrest is such a prominent
I can't put it any more plainly.
No, you can't, and I would agree with you. But does it worry you that Twiggy Forrest makes such a gushing attempt to smooth over any...
Look at this. Scott never did selfies all day and was proud of the Australian flag. What? Why would we need import beef? We export beef because we are a primary producer. Our beef is 10 times better than anything that comes out of the USA. Stop net zero. Can you see the fucking talking points that are here? So funny. I haven't practiced any boxing for a while, so I might be rusty. That would be so satisfying. Yeah, I know, punching Scott Morrison in the face. It would, wouldn't it? What is going on here? Seriously. Yeah, apparently we're going to start importing American beef. Is that right? I've heard that on the wind. It's a bit crazy. Apparently it never really met our standards. But here we go. Why would we need or want to import beef into Australia? We have the best beef production in the world. Why buy grain-fed beef when you have the finest grass-fed in the world? It's pretty interesting. Albanese doesn't give a rat's about our farmers. Chris Kenny is woke news. Get rid of him. I just love the comment section in Sky News stuff. It's crazy. The Kenny, this guy's woke. Yeah, sure, buddy. Far out. That's
During
a
your
bit of a
time as
stretch.
prime minister, China.
See, I don't get it, man. Like, we just watched him speaking, and what was he talking about? Like, the Americans had a select committee in Congress and got Scott Morrison over there to tell them what they wanted to hear. Like, nothing. Basically nothing. That, like, Australians are playing right into the hands of the Chinese. They think that it's more important to have a relationship with China because they are a bigger economic trading partner than anyone else. So they're so significant to our economy, up in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And that is Chinese propaganda and manipulation to think that we should be favoring our economic ties to China because, again, it's worth hundreds of billions of dollars to our economy. And we should be instead, when people like, what's his name, Eldred Colby, calls up the Australians and says something like, hey, can you commit to a war that hasn't even started yet? You know, who knows if it's going to happen, but can you commit to a war that we won't even commit to ourselves? Can you commit to that? We're supposed to be jumping all over that like a rash because it's fucking China, and China's fucking evil. So watch out for those Chinese. That's basically what this select committee is about. Is that China is a threat. It's evil, absolutely evil. And like, we need washed up politicians from around the world to fly across to this committee to tell us stuff that like we already know anyway. I'm just here to watch Trash Fire. Sup, guys? Good to see you. Welcome to the stream. Dr. Nathan, miss my 14-word comment. Thought that was a good dig at him being a white nationalist. Damn. Squeeb is back. Crazy. Lunch break and the topic continues. Dr. Nathan, he's trying to give them a reason to care about Australia, but it's not that they don't care about us. It's they don't even think about us. Yeah, that's why I was surprised when David said before that he knew about AUKUS, because I didn't think the Americans would be across that at all, to be honest. So, like, you know, non-issue for them. We need America for military support to maintain our economic relationship status quo with China. That is fucking hilarious. That is, ladies and gentlemen, that is the best way of looking at our relationship. Like, we are, like, you know, in the middle of this love triangle here. We need America for military support to maintain our economic relationship status quo with China. Hilarious. Yeah, that's so good. I'm just here to watch Trash Fire. We need to pivot back to the USA because whiteness. Well, like, that's pretty much it. Like, that's what ye old John Molnar is asking ye old Scott Morrison over here. It's just like, can you tell us why we need to be careful of those Chinese people, and what's better for your relations right now? Oh, liberal democracies and Western culture and values for sure. You know, they are totalitarian. It's an evil, authoritarian regime. They don't get us. And so we need to, you know, warm up to the Americans as much as possible. All of us liberal democratic Western nations need to stick together in the face of this evil China threat. Well, we have been reading Project 2025 for a while now, and we know exactly what this is all about. This is part of the Conservative promise. It's part of their manifesto. They have put it down. China is threat number one. And if nothing else, as Avalava will rightly say, it gives the Americans a tool to manufacture consent. Got to have an enemy. You got to have a boogeyman to keep public opinion in check. And China is the boogeyman. Absolutely. And so, like, it's a large portion of Project 2025 document that talks about, like, America is not taking the threat of China serious enough. And it's not an economic competitor. All this rhetoric about them being a competitor, that is not enough. They are an enemy. This is war. And so you have a select committee on the CCP in Congress, and they're flying over washed up politicians like our former Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who basically said fucking nothing. He said nothing just then. He just basically called them authoritarian and everyone else democratic, and our society is based on a market economy and theirs is not. And they threatened me when I was Prime Minister. They threatened me. 14 accusations they made about us. They had grievances, they did. And now we're cozying up to the Chinese. And this is how it works. They've already changed Australian popular opinion. And people think that China, who's good for the economy, must be good for us generally. They've already brainwashed the Australian people. Can't you tell? We're all brainwashed. And like the select committee over here is terrified, thanks to good old Scott Morrison. And that's Australian relations with China right now in a nutshell. David says Australia is basically buying 5 free subs for the US Navy, since our Navy will control how these subs will be used and deployed anyway. Yeah, that's the weird thing about this situation, right? Is that like they're controlled by the US, and they can be controlled. So, you know, the question that was put to our current Prime Minister was like, oh, so how are we going to use these subs anyway? Do we just have to use them in any way America wants? He's like, no, we've got our own sovereignty. But like, from what I understand is like, you know, they are remotely operated or operable by the Americans. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. And, you know, David, I think you got a point there. What the fuck is, what's the point of having subs that can be just used by, controlled by somebody else's Navy anyway? That's the point of them. Panda politics is about, we send a guy who is soft, but at least he got a podium, at least he got the invite. We buy their surplus subs is the deal. So they get the new ones. Yeah, that's true. But apparently, like, they're not even sure if they want to spend the money to make their subs. They're reviewing this AUKUS deal anyway. Like, we don't even know where we stand with AUKUS right now. That's what I understand. They're reviewing it. So like, well, let's find out. Maybe the Americans will pull out because they can't be fucked supplying it anymore. It might not be lucrative for them at the end of the day. We will find out. Time will tell. But that's Australian relations with China in a nutshell right now. The Prime Minister's been over there. It seems like it's pretty, like just a panda diplomacy trip. He shook hands, had a couple of buffets, looked at some pandas, smooth over China's relations. They don't have 14 grievances anymore. Trade's doing well. Everyone thinks hunky-dory. Met the president, met the first premier, met some notable Chinese politicians outside of that. And, you know, you have old politicians, old prime ministers going over stirring up the Americans, who are pretty gung-ho, because this conservative government that's in power at the moment, they are very gung-ho about anti-China policy at all costs, at all levels. They are an enemy, not a competitor. They're trying to rewrite the conversation here to make it out like China is an enemy. And so, like, if that is the case, and we are looking at our regional interests here in Australia and in New Zealand, and we're trying to figure out how to play regionally in this while keeping our economies, you know, on the level, at least, if nothing else, we're going to have to navigate this, because the American conservative promise here, which is being played out, you can see it, it's being played out by the Americans, is that that China is an actual enemy. There's no diplomacy in there. This is a declaration of war. And they're scratching around at the bottom of the barrel, with people like this. Look at this guy. Look at that fucking head. That's the same face that he made when he shat himself at Engadine Macca's. Look at that face. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel, trying to get people that will be like, yes, China is an absolute threat to your sovereignty. They're already manipulating the hearts and the minds of the Australian people with things like trade. Have you ever heard of that word before? Scary word. People are worried about economics. Watch out for it. So like that's the long and the short of our relations at the moment. They seem to be in a good position. They seem to be okay. But like you have war hawks who are worried about what that means if we set up good relations in our part of the world. I think it's important for Australia and New Zealand to keep a position of almost neutrality between two great powers. And play the game in our interest for a change. For fuck's sake. That would be nice. That would be nice. What have I missed in the chat? That's why it's bad for Oz. President can just declare that they have no surplus. David is an actual AUKUS Andy in the wild. We only get the subs if the US doesn't need them. What a crock. Yeah, we pay a fixed fee either way. The fixed fee is our sovereignty. That's hilarious. Yeah, that's the price on this, is our sovereignty. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you everyone for joining on this Friday. Just remember, on this Friday, the eve of the weekend, I hope you enjoy your time away from the clutches of capital. I hope it cannot touch you, it cannot do anything to you for the next couple of days. And if you do have to work, that you get duly compensated for that. You get some type of penalty rates or compensation or appropriate remuneration in some form or another, because this is your time as working people away from the clutches of capital. So I hope you enjoy your weekends. Thank you for everyone that has joined in today. It's been quite the interesting discussion. Not where we thought we'd be starting, but we were looking at some South Park and their scathing commentary on Donald Trump or recently, which was hilarious. So thanks to Squeeb at the start, 4AS as well. Stephen said, good to have you on a Friday. It seems to be a pattern of yours. And Dr. Nathan, as always. Good to have the banter. And W, we had W in today, which is nice. Dilemmas. It's good to have you. 85. Who else have I missed? Jerry Poppins. David in there. David gets a bit of a shoe in on a Friday, which is nice. Doesn't normally happen. And I'm just here to watch a trash fire. And of course, on the stream chat, keeping it lively, Avalava. So yeah, everybody, thank you for your interactions today. And I will see you next week. We'll be back on YouTube. And yeah, enjoy your weekend. Until next time, please remember, I am, you are, we are MysterE. See you next week.